drinking black tea calmly at Hogwarts. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 526 Busy. O Cyrillic letter de Greek letter psi. The fork in Zhang Su's hand fell to the table with a clack, and then he stared at Luna, who was sitting beside him in a daze. You say that I have done something to apologize to Harry recently? Zhang Su asked in disbelief. Yes. Luna nodded seriously. Isn't that obvious? Everyone can see that Harry has been looking for you all this time, and you have been reluctant to see him because of your guilty conscience. And the way Harry looked at you afterwards in Luna's narration, Zhang Su finally knew how this along came about. Don't spread such nonsense. Depressed Zhang Su could only end Luna's revelation with a knife in his hand. Now Zhang Su really hides whenever he sees Harry. That's because in the recent period, he saw Harry 10 times, and Harry asked him 15 times if he was ready. All Harry could think about was going back to see his parents. It wasn't until Zhang Su took out a certain medicine bottle and threatened Harry that if he urged him again, he would pour him another bottle of certain medicine, and then throw it to Snape, which made Harry quiet. But later, whenever he saw Harry's tightly shut mouth and resentful eyes, he had the urge to knock him to death with a rolling pin. If he can't afford it, then he can only dodge as much as possible. Naturally, this kind of thing cannot be hidden from the sharp eyes of other students, but when there is no further news, the students once again use their brains with boundless thinking jumps, trying to deduce the truth of the matter through various details. So, guesses like what to mess with, what to discard, what to move, what to do, etc. are flying all over the sky, especially with the news that a certain Zhang and a certain twin sister spread a while ago as evidence. He has become the Hogwarts Chen Shimi, who has a new love and abandoned the old love in the rumors. What's even worse is that Ron, Hermione, and Ginny have been laughing and keeping silent. As a result, Michael Owen, who has always had a good relationship with Zhang since the beginning of school, also shies away from him. They all ran to other places to sit with their friends. Now that someone Zhang learned about these rumors from Luna, he really wanted to put a cloud bomb in the cafeteria. He couldn't have captured Harry and put on a show to quell the rumors. It's not that he doesn't want to solve Harry's problem as soon as possible, but there are a lot of things about someone Zhang recently, the tasks issued by Scrimgeour, the tasks issued by Professor McGonagall, plus the preparation of refining Felicia and the preparation of Felicia researching and developing a much-needed new potion based on the basics of his life already filled up his spare time. Just when the fork in Zhang Su's hand fell to the ground, Draco Malfoy was also so frightened by the sudden accident that the knife and fork in his hand fell to the ground. Xiao Ma has been having a hard time recently. Dealing with those family officials every day is a very hard job, especially when high profits are involved. A battle of wits and wits is inevitable. Xiao Ma, who now drags his exhausted body home every day, has experienced the difficulty of work and life. When he looked in the mirror recently, he found that his hairline had climbed up a little more in fine after seeing the Hogwarts owl flying in front of him and the letter signed by Zhang Su on the owl's leg. The pony, who was extremely tired and nervous, the first thing he thought of was that he was secretly. It was discovered that he was using the other party's name to bluff and deceive, and now the other party is going to ask for a crime. While Xiao Ma was thinking about going to Africa to hide his name for a while, he opened Zhang Su's letter. After reading the contents of the letter, Xiao Ma finally breathed a sigh of relief. The other party didn't come to question the crime, but just asked him to pass a message to his father. Negotiating with Malfoy, the pseudo-minister of magic, it is naturally impossible for Zhang Su to ask for a leave of absence and then just go to London to talk in Lao Ma's office. It is necessary to entrust a middleman to bring a word of speech. Zhang Su can be said to be the middleman of the Ministry of Magic, and Xiao Ma is Zhang Su's middleman. The pony with a stone in his heart first handed the letter in his hand to the old horse sitting at the dining table, then picked up the knife and fork and continued to deal with the steak in front of him. A while ago, in order to save money for the family, the Malfoy family began to budget carefully, and cheap chicken became a frequent visitor on the table. With the business of the Ministry of Magic getting better and better recently, steak has only returned to the family's dinner plate. After dinner, the old horse went to see Voldemort. At the same time, Zhang Su also came to the Centaur tribe to inquire about news. It's just that there has been too much noise in the Forbidden Forest recently, and the unicorns, which have a natural encounter with evil, have gone deep into the Forbidden Forest, and the Centaur patrols haven't seen them for a long time. And now that the Centaur tribe is shrinking their defenses, they have no extra strength to enter the depths of the Forbidden Forest. Zhang Su couldn't force the Centaur tribe to send a team out to help find the unicorn, so he could only return without success tonight. While returning to Hogwarts, Zhang Su planned to find some time to explore the depths of the Forbidden Forest. The tall trees in the Forbidden Forest greatly reduced the effectiveness of aerial reconnaissance, so he could only search around water sources. Moreover, unicorns usually go to the water's edge to drink at dusk, so he can only take dry food and run to the Forbidden Forest after class, and then go back to make up for dinner. After returning to Hogwarts, Zhang Su returned directly to the professor's dormitory. There was a new package on the coffee table in the living room. After he learned about the letic that day, he inquired about the relevant situation in China within the shortest possible time, and now the country has given a reply. Zhang Su opened the package and found that it was not medical advertisements from major hospitals, but printed in bound papers. Research on the mechanism and triggering conditions of the blood curse, the basis and method for judging the different inheritance modes of the blood curse, the relationship between the blood curse and genetic diseases, the application progress of genetic diagnosis technology in the field of blood curse detection, the genetic diagnosis and application of the blood curse research. Zhang Su put the thesis in his hands aside, poured himself a cup of tea, and looked at the ceiling while holding the cup. Although he was already mentally prepared for this, it did not prevent him from complaining deeply about these papers. However, it can be seen from these papers that letic and domestic blood curses with similar symptoms should not be the same thing in essence, so the reference value is not very great. At this moment, there was a knock on the door of the dormitory. The person who came to visit at night surprised Zhang Su, and it happened to be Astoria, the person involved in this incident. Chapter 527 Fueling Soft Capsule. At Hogwarts, each headmaster has his own management style. The former headmaster, Dumbledore, was not so strict in the management of Hogwarts details due to his years of dedication to the cause of rebellion, so in recent years, Zhang has had a lot of room to make trouble. Now that Professor McGonagall is in power, the students have begun to find that the shackles on their heads are getting tighter and tighter. At least the night tour students are not so relaxed now. My Meow, who would open her eyes and close her eyes when she was not the principal, will suddenly jump out of nowhere, and then detain the caught student's point. At the same time, Professor McGonagall strictly grasped the bottom line of Hogwarts that women can't be born, and men can't die. Recently, she has caught several pairs of students who almost misfired. So when she received a message from a ghost about a girl entering Professor Zhang's dormitory before going to bed, she immediately went to the dormitory of the key target to arrest her. Along the way, Professor McGonagall's face was a little gloomy. It was she who told Astoria herself that Zhang Su helped solve their sister's curse, in order to make her feel more at ease. Professor McGonagall is also prepared for Astoria to thank Zhang Su, but now she is alone in the dormitory in the middle of the night. What will happen to her under such favorable circumstances? I have seen a lot in my educational career. Especially Zhang Su, who is restless in this regard. Professor McGonagall has almost no trust in him. Back then, Mr. Zhang met Furin in Buttons, and she brought it by herself. It's not like she didn't hear the gossip among the students. The girls who want to have something with Mr. Zhang over the years are enough to play a Quidditch match. Yes, although none of those girls succeeded, but this does not mean that Zhang can be taken lightly. 3 years ago, he dared to take his girlfriend back to the dormitory with the acquiescence of the two principals. In the past 2 years, he has attacked other professors, and this year he hooked up again. The tenants at home, even my niece, almost got in thinking along the way. Professor McGonagall's wand appeared in her hand at some point. Originally, Professor McGonagall wanted to push the door directly into Zhang Su's dormitory, but at the last moment, she suddenly thought of what happened to Sneawa, and had to knock on the door instead. The door of the room was opened in the next second, and Professor McGonagall walked in. After seeing the situation in the living room, he couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. At least the clothes of the 3 people in the living room were all neatly dressed. 3 people. Professor McGonagall looked at the extra professor in the living room with some surprise. What's the matter, Professor McGonagall? Zhang Su was also at a loss. I heard that some students left the common room when it was time to sleep, so I came to take a look, Professor McGonagall said in her businesslike tone. Astoria twitched on the sofa a little uneasy. Her actions tonight had indeed violated the school rules, and the most important thing was that she was caught by the principal on the spot. It's not easy for Zhang Su to excuse Astoria at this time, although it's really okay for her to come here tonight, just to thank himself, and he called the girl to his dormitory at night. If the news got out, he would have to kneel the durian into a watermelon. It was I who called Miss Greengrass. Seeing the current situation, the aging Slughorn immediately excused the students of his college. Pointing to the pile of papers on Zhang Su's coffee table, Slughorn said to Professor McGonagall, "Just now I got some inspiration after studying these papers, so I called Miss Greengrass to ask some questions. You also know that sometimes if the inspiration in the mind is not caught in time, it is easy to let them run away." Now that Slughorn said so, Professor McGonagall had to give him face. She has not been the principal for a long time, and her prestige has not yet reached the point where she can ignore other colleagues. After Astoria was driven back by Professor McGonagall, Zhang Su was secretly relieved if Slughorn hadn't just come looking for him just now. This level would not be easy to pass tonight. The plums in the melon field need to use Veritaserum to prove their innocence. It's just that when Slughorn first came in, the scene was not much better. "What's the matter with you two?" After Professor McGonagall left Zhang Su's dormitory, he found that Zhang Su and Slughorn also came out. Slughorn took out a pocket watch, glanced at it, and said, "Zhang is refining the elixir of felicity at my place, and the next step is 23 minutes and 33 seconds away, so let me remind him." Professor McGonagall frowned. She knew that several steps in the refining of Felix elixir would take a long time, and the time to start the next step must be strictly observed, otherwise the professor's office in potions class would have to be redecorated up. So when Zhang Su came to the crucible, he looked nervously at the crucible on the stove. The emerald green liquid inside was constantly tumbling, and the steam from the pot was constantly rising. "It's almost time," Slughorn said to Zhang Su, holding his pocket watch. Zhang Su nodded, and then checked the raw materials to be used next. Now is the final step of refining the blessing elixir. He only needs to add golden lotus into the crucible later, and the crystal bottle used to hold the blessing elixir is also ready. 10, 9, 3, 2, 1. As Slughorn's countdown ended, standing by the office door, the potion in the cauldron suddenly turned bright yellow. Zhang Su seized the few seconds before the potion exploded, and threw the golden lotus into the crucible without hesitation. Then Zhang Su tapped the potion with his wand. Some steps in potion refining require magic to participate in it. Even if it is mechanized and fully automatic medicine, a wizard needs to cast spells on the potion being refined at a specific time. If it is operated by muggles, it will inevitably fail in the end. After Zhang Su cast a spell on the potion, the color of the potion in the crucible changed from bright yellow to golden at the same time. The medicine that was just boiling suddenly became joyful, just a little at first, and then more and more droplets jumped up like fish out of water. Half an hour later, Slughorn, who just walked out of the office after the countdown was completed, carefully returned to the office after seeing that the explosion that failed to refine the Felix elixir did not happen. "It's done," Zhang Su said to Slughorn. Zhang Su heaved a sigh of relief. A big stone in his heart was finally let go. At this point, as long as it doesn't explode, it's a success. After filling a large pot of Felix elixir with several crystal bottles, Zhang Su said goodbye to Slughorn, and then returned to the dormitory with a yawn. The ideal dosage for a single dose of Felicia is 1 drop each time, but according to the previous small bottle packaging, it is not easy to take it accurately, and you may get bored in one mouthful. So Zhang Su thought of packaging the Felicity Elixir Light Cod Liver Oil soft capsules from the very beginning. When needed, he only needs to take one and throw it in his mouth, bite it and swallow it. It's just that the amount of this fueling soft capsule is too large, and the production process is a bit cumbersome and boring. He decided to find some free labor to help him. Chapter 528. For some time now, Harry has been obsessed with traveling through time to meet his parents. Please see the most complete, the fastest updated novel. So much so that when he found out that he was being treated as free labor by the unscrupulous Zhang, the work that Zhang had arranged for him had already been done. The moment Harry sealed the last capsule and put it neatly in the box, a light flashed in his mind, as if this trip doesn't need so many potions, right? "You're using me again?" Harry asked Zhang Su angrily. Zhang Su put down the parchment in his hand and sighed. If it was Harley who was talking to him at this time, it would be seductive. "I didn't. How could it be? Don't talk nonsense." It was impossible for him to admit it. Then Harry looked at Ron, who was sitting on the side. He had been slacking off at work just now, and now he was finishing his work and started to eliminate the treats prepared in Zhang Su's living room. "When did you find out?" Harry asked his good buddy sadly. He didn't tell himself when he found out the problem. Ron swallowed a piece of the tart, and said, "Hermione told me." Finally Harry looked around in the Muggle Studies office, but found no sign of Hermione. That's when Harry remembered that Hermione had called in sick the day after they'd come to do free labor. Ron also asked for leave to take Hermione to the school infirmary that day. If he hadn't felt uneasy about his behavior of abandoning his good buddies, he would have found an excuse to get out of someone's exploitation. Ahem, don't worry about the details. Zhang-Su picked up the parchment again and said, "It's better to call Hermione here. Let's discuss the plan of action here." 5 minutes later, the door of the office opened, and Hermione poked her head in to make sure that no one had tricked her into being a cheap labor force. After the four of them sat down in a row, Zhang-Su said to Harry's trio, "First of all, in order to minimize the impact of the four of us on time in this operation, we must change our appearance in this operation." Harry immediately drew out his wand and pointed it at Zhang-Su. He said to Zhang-Su sternly, "Don't try to turn me into a girl this time. Then according to your plan, what identity will you use to chat with your mother?" Zhang-Su asked, "Do you want to pretend to be Snape?" "There's a third option," said Harry without flinching, "even if it's Ron." Ron curled his lips aside. He kind of agrees with Zhang-Su's way of turning Harry into a girl again. After Zhang-Su and Harry had a candid exchange of opinions, they decided to put this issue aside for now. At this time, Zhang-Su thought of Yi Daxun, who once appeared in front of his father as a lily-like girl. If Harley did the same thing. Harry's plan of action included going to Godric's Hollow to meet his father. This kind of thing can only be played by ear. At this moment, Zhang-Su turned to Hermione and Ron, and asked, "How is your body transformation technique?" "Not as good as you." Ron said a little discouraged, "It can only last for 2 or 3 hours. Half a day." Hermione's tone was also full of unwillingness. "The current professor of transfiguration is Blake. He was able to become an animagus when he was a student, which proved that his theoretical foundation and practical operation of transfiguration are excellent enough. In fact, Ron and Hermione's strength in transfiguration is limited, Ron's theory is not good, and Hermione's practice is not good enough. As a result, the two of them are very unhappy behind someone Zhang who has excellent extracurricular tutoring." At the same time, Professor Black was also upset because Zhang-Su's situation in class was exactly the same as Harry's in Snape's class, but Zhang-Su's performance in class was always perfect, and Black couldn't catch him. "Then I'll be in charge of changing your makeup when the time comes," Zhang-Su said. Although Hermione was not convinced, she was helpless. Ron sat up straight in shock. He was afraid that he would follow Harry's old way. Zhang-Su didn't mention this again, but took the plan written by Harry and said, "The destination of the first step of Harry's plan is before his parents come to Hogwarts. Live in that era for about 2 weeks. And the first problem we face is that we need the currency of that era, whether it's sterling or galleons." "It was hard to get pounds at that time," Hermione said. "We can only use galleons, and we can exchange them for pounds from Gringotts when we need them." "Then Harry should write to Gringotts and let the goblins get some ancient gold coins from your vault," Zhang-Su said to Harry. This trip was Harry's dream come true, and he should pay for the money in a reasonable way. "So where will we live then?" Ron asked suddenly. "It's too late to live in the leaky cauldron," Zhang-Su said. "Do you still want to go back to the burrow?" At this time, he suddenly thought of a question, so he said, "At that time, the Death Eaters were already doing evil. At that time, everyone should be careful, run as much as possible, and try not to get involved as much as possible. What if we get separated?" Harry thought of another question. "Let's go to Hogsmeade," said Hermione. "Because Hogsmeade is next to Hogwarts, you know who and Death Eaters won't make trouble there at that time. If Hogsmeade is not safe anymore, we can enter the Room of Requirement through the secret passage in the Pig's Head pub. The worst plan is to ask Dumbledore for help." Then Hermione said to Harry, who was getting excited, "Harry, in case of such a situation, we can't reveal our identity in front of Dumbledore, we have to forge a passable identity. How about we are wizards from America or Canada? We've all heard Rove say a lot about Ilvermorny, so I can get away with it when I think about it. As long as you don't say you came to Hogwarts to free the house-elves," Ron said. "What if we meet you know who?" Ron asked, rubbing his ribs from Hermione's triple elbow. "It was an escape," said Hermione. "The less interaction we had with him at that point, the better. At that time, there was no way you could defeat him, Harry." Hermione said to the thoughtful Harry, "We can't change history, even at the last moment." Next, When the three of Harry were discussing how to deal with an accident, Zhang Su fell into deep thought. If this time travel went ahead as Harry planned without incident, it seemed like he could take the opportunity to do something. 50/5 ml Chapter 529. Boom! Ouch! You are crushing me. Whose hand is going to get away? Quickly keep quiet. After a while of flying around, the four people who suddenly appeared in the classroom finally broke free from the time turner's lanyard, and then found a stool to sit on the side. After a while, Leonardo began to roll the roll. Macaulay Culkin, how is your situation? Just a little dizzy, Macaulay said while touching the scar on his forehead. He was at the bottom when he landed just now, and his forehead hit the floor. Tom Cruise, what about you? Xiao Zhangzi then asked. I'm also dizzy, and my legs are a little numb at the same time, Tom said while rubbing his legs. It's not a big problem. Xiao Zhang nodded and continued to ask, Halle Berry, what about you? Dizziness? I'm not asking you, Mr. Macaulay Culkin. Chest hurts, nausea. Halle Berry looked at Tom for a while, and Leonardo for a while, trying to find the culprit of her chest pain. Okay, everyone, take a break first, and try using magic after the discomfort disappears. Xiao Lizzie took out a few pieces of chocolate and handed them to the three of them respectively. The classroom we appeared in has changed, and I think the time must also change. It will change, and if the deviation is not too big, it will be fine to adjust it a little. Macaulay and the three of them nodded while eating chocolate. There are many empty classrooms on the 5th floor of Hogwarts. In one of the classrooms, there is a wall clock that can display the year, month and day at the same time. It is said that Dumbledore made it when he was a student. From the very beginning, Xiao Zhangzi and the others chose to use the time converter in that classroom to determine whether there was any deviation in the group's destination. It's just that the place where they appear now is shifted by 2 classrooms compared to the original plan, so the time deviation will inevitably appear, so they had to be cautious in the future. It was okay to meet Loudon. If the 4 founders of Hogwarts appeared in front of them, they would be out of play. At this moment, a familiar voice suddenly came from outside the closed door of the classroom. Professor Tolkien, what do you think of numbers and magic? Xiao Zhangzi immediately recognized who the voice was, and then countless alpacas started running wildly in his heart. Tom, you want to ask about the number 7? Asked the professor, whom the young students called Tolkien. Yes, the magical properties of 7 were first discovered by Bridget Wenlock in the 13th century, and I did some research on it, Tom said. Is it a number with magical properties? It's good for you to think so. Professor Tolkien said, actually, recently I discovered that there is a number that also has magical powers, and that is 3. Next, the discussion in the corridor outside the door became more and more indistinct as the 2 left, and it didn't take long for the voice to disappear at the corner of the corridor. Xiao Zhangzi let go of Macaulay, who was being held down by him, and at the same time he breathed a sigh of relief and said, it seems that our first stop is a bit off, and it is a certain day in the 40s. Who are those 2 people outside? Tom Cruise asked. He had guessed when he saw Macaulay's impulsive appearance just now. Professor Tom Riddle and John Ronald Reuel Tolkien. Xiao Zhangzi replied, it is Voldemort, who is still a student and the current professor of ancient runes. Then the topic they were discussing. Halle Berry entered the schoolmaster mode. About the research on the number 3, you can go back and ask Professor Babbling. She is now inheriting Professor Tolkien's work and doing research in this area. Xiao Zhangzi said, Macaulay, hurry up and get the work done. Click on the map and take it out to have a look. If there is no one around, we will go back to that classroom immediately. Fortunately, the Marauders map can still be used. It took the 4 of them less than a minute to arrive at the originally planned classroom. Ah, what time? Halle Berry exclaimed in surprise after seeing the clock on the wall. What's the matter? Asked Tom. Is someone in the family about to be born? Tomorrow is the day Myrtle was killed, said Halle Berry. The other 3 were surprised at first, and then sighed at the same time. Let's go. Xiao Zhangzi said, there are things we can't change. With the error value of the first time, the accuracy of the adjusted time converter is much improved when it travels through time and space for the second time. It was another jumping landing, and this time it was Tom Cruise who was crushed below. It's 11 o'clock in the evening on August 1968. 8. This time is within the tolerance. Let's take a break and leave Hogwarts. Xiao Zhangzi, who was the first to recover from the dizziness, said to the other 3 said. Are we going overnight? Halle Berry asked. How about we spend the night in Hogsmeade first? Tom Cruise asked the others for advice. According to the plan, the four of them will go to Hogsmeade from the secret passage, and then take the night bus to Diagon Alley to inquire about the news before proceeding to the next step. You decide. Xiao Zhangzi said to Macaulay. We're not in a good state right now, and I don't think it's a good idea for us to ride the Cavaliers bus at this time, Macaulay said. The other three couldn't help but nod their heads in agreement when they thought of the situation on board the night bus. Where shall we spend the night then? Tom asked. The four of them figured it out. The Forbidden Forest was ruled out first, and the Shrieking Shack hadn't been built yet, so if they were looking for a place in Hogwarts Castle, they might encounter Peeves and ghosts, so they had to go to Hogwarts Castle. Hogsmeade looked at it before thinking of a solution. After the discussion between the four, they began to prepare to leave Hogwarts. Although it was Hogwarts summer vacation time and there were no students in the castle, it didn't mean there were no others. The three of Macaulay and the others got into the legendary invisibility cloak again, while Xiao Zhangzi turned into a black cat in an attempt to get under the invisibility cloak as well. As a result, he accidentally got under someone's robe, and was kicked out by Halle Berry before he raised his head. Xiao Zhangmimi reluctantly gave up the action of rubbing the Deathly Hallows, so she could only change back to her original form and put an illusion spell on herself. It has to be said that their prudence saved them a huge trouble, because they met the 30-year-old Professor McGonagall on the stairs. At this time, Professor McGonagall was still living in the castle. It's just that when Professor McGonagall passed by them, someone smelled the unique smell of shower gel and shampoo in the professor's bathroom. Chapter 530. 3 Who I am, where am I, what am I doing in the Thames River? A person was floating on the river with his back to the sky, staring blankly at the fiery red sunset in the sky and the sunset that had already fallen halfway to the horizon in the distance, and was drifting downstream with the current. With a return of consciousness, the person floating on the water finally recalled something. After leaving, Professor McGonagall deleted, Hogwarts Castle, who had just come out of the bath last night. The four of them came to Hogsmeade's Hogshead pub to open a room for the night. Early the next morning, when they boarded the night bus, they found that the car in the 60s was no different from the car in the 90s, with the same messy arrangement and the same crazy driving style. Not long after the car left Hogsmeade, the speed of the car reached its peak, and Ernplin, the driver who had just reached middle age, stepped on the brakes to the bottom. The seats in the car and the four poor passengers immediately flipped over according to Newton's first law. If they hadn't prepared in advance, they might have rolled to the front of the car. Welcome to the night bus, young lady. Following the conductor's greeting, a cute lolly in a gorgeous dress boarded the car. The lolly glanced at the four stunned passengers in the car, as if they were overwhelmed by her beauty. She gave a soft hum and began to look for a suitable seat. Hold back, it's not the time, be careful to call the Auror. The voices of the three companions behind him rang in Leonardo Zhang's ears at the same time. But before Xiao Zhangzi could react, the driver stepped on the accelerator and started the car. Lori, who hadn't found a place to sit, suddenly lost her footing, staggered and almost fell. At this moment, an arm gently wrapped around her waist, and then carried her over to a chair. Thank you very much. Little Lolly thanked the young man who sat beside her and helped her up. You're welcome. Xiao Zhangzi said, this is your first time riding in this car. You must find a seat in the car as soon as possible. Little Lolita nodded with fear on her face. Taking this bus for the first time is a test of the passenger's psychological endurance. Within a few minutes, little Lolita's face turned pale. Degree, do you want a lollipop? It's strawberry flavored. Xiao Zhangzi handed a lollipop to the little girl beside him. It will make you feel better after eating it. My name is Leonardo DiCaprio. I am an American wizard visiting England. May I have the honor to know your name, beautiful lady? The three onlookers sitting in the back of the car continued to stare dumbfounded at the two people who started chatting in front of them, with their mouths open enough to stuff a duck egg in. The two of them hooked up now, it's incredible. How about we film this scene? Isn't it good to be alive? Which of the two of them can you beat? Next we pretend we don't know them. Why, what if he really summoned the Auror? Don't forget who the current director of magical law enforcement is. You said what would happen if her family members showed up. At that time, we'll just watch the excitement from a distance. Oh, when the night bus arrived in front of the Leaky Cauldron, there was a heavy rain in the sky in London. The two people who had just met on the bus got out of the bus holding hands and holding umbrellas, passed through the Leaky Cauldron and came to the opposite side corner alley. The trio of spectators followed the two of them from a distance, watching the two of them enter Gringotts, and then bought wands, robes, first-grade textbooks and cauldrons to prepare for little Lolita's upcoming Hogwarts tour makes big purchases. However, when the two of them came out of the candy store after a day's shopping and were sitting in a cold drink shop eating and chatting, Xiao Zhangzi's eyes suddenly went dark, and then he didn't know anything. When Xiao Zhangzi opened his eyes, he found himself at the bottom of an unknown place, and it seemed that he had such an experience not long ago. In the end, it was the trio who watched the excitement and got Xiao Zhangzi floating on the water ashore. "How? Is there any injury?" Macaulay asked, but the tone of schadenfreude could be heard in his words. "It's okay." Xiao Zhangzi, who had already recovered, said angrily, "You all know that you are watching the fun from the sidelines and don't help me. It's your own carelessness. Usually you would never let such a sneak attack succeed." Tom Cruise said with a smirk, "And this is your family business, we have nothing to do with it. Let's not talk about this." Xiao Zhangzi also recovered at this time, and asked after removing all the water and sands from his body with a magic wand, "What do you plan to do next?" "We plan to go to Godric's Hollow first," Macaulay said excitedly. "Today we met my father and my grandparents in Diagon Alley, and talked to them. My father invited let's go to his house to play." Xiao Zhangzi looked at the excited 8-year-old kid in front of him speechlessly, and told him, "Be careful when the time comes, don't let it slip when you get excited." "Aren't you going together?" Macaulay said to Xiao Zhangzi with some regret. "I also want to introduce you to them." "Forget it, I'm not Ginny." Xiao Zhangzi waved his hand and said, "There won't be any troubles happening in the future. I also plan to go to Canada to visit an old friend. He is 78 years old this year. I won't go, there will be no chance in the future." "Then you can go to Godric's Hollow to find us first when you return to England," Macaulay said. "It depends." Xiao Zhangzi said, "If I can't find you there, I will go to Hogwarts to find you first. If there's any problem, then leave a mark as agreed. Sneak in through the secret passage when you were at Hogwarts. You all remember the method of breaking the defensive magic in the secret passage. The known secret passages of Hogwarts all have defensive magic, and there will be reactions when someone passes by. It's just that when Loudang asked Zhang Su to help set up the defense in the secret passage, he revealed all these contents, so that Zhang Su could enter the secret passage as if no one was there, so the four of them could live in peace last night. From the secret passage to Hogsmeade, it's just that these magics haven't been updated for decades, which made Xiao Zhangzi complain for a while. Okay, then let's separate here first, and we will meet again after a while, Macaulay said to Xiao Zhangzi. Okay. Xiao Zhangzi said, you should also pay attention and control your emotions. Chapter 531 Behind the Laughter. There are sometimes people who are unlucky because of this. The Railway View Hotel is located on the edge of Hogwarts. Standing at the front door of the hotel, you can see the railway leading to the nearby industrial area. When you stand in the room on the top floor and look through the window to the back of the hotel, you can see across the embankment and see a small river. It's just that this small river is now insulated from adjectives such as sparkling and clear to the bottom. The industrial wastewater discharged from the upstream factories makes the water in this small river not much lighter than ink. And when the wind is not on the right direction, the smoke from the factory in the distance will drift towards Hogwarts, and it is absolutely stupid to open the window at that time. Perhaps it is precisely because of living in such an environment since childhood that someone has developed a bad habit of being extremely unhygienic, such as not washing his hair all year round. Perhaps someone in the plot was not eaten after being bitten by Nagini because Nagini thought he was unclean. Not long ago, 3 young Americans lived in the hotel. They said they came here to help their relatives find a comrade-in-arms who saved their lives in France more than 20 years ago. Somehow the owner of the hotel believed them, and in addition to giving them 2 rooms, he also agreed to rent the kitchen to them. After closing the door of the hotel, the young boss and his wife went back to their room to rest. They didn't notice that they went to bed earlier than usual recently. In the hotel kitchen, 2, year-olds were watching with great interest an, year-old boy struggling with flour. Try using this instead of honey. This is maple syrup with a unique taste, a specialty from Canada. Leonardo Zhang took out a bottle of maple syrup in a glass bottle shaped like a maple leaf and handed it to Macaulay. There aren't many good things in Canada these days, except for canned fish and meat. Why did it take so long to go to Canada this time? Macaulay asked after taking the maple syrup. I can't help it, That old friend is too warm. Xiao Zhangzi said, according to his experience, we haven't seen each other for almost 30 years. He thought I was dead at first, so after this meeting he insisted pull me and let me stay for a few more days. You are very important to him. Halle Berry said. That's right. Xiao Zhangzi said with some regret, I left him all the best medicine I had with me, and it was considered to have saved his life later on. At this moment, the door of the kitchen opened, and there was no one outside the door. After a while, Tom Cruise got out from under the invisibility cloak. I'm a little curious about what kind of person this friend of yours is. Could it be that he is a great beauty? Otherwise, why did you delay your return for so many days? Tom asked as he folded the invisibility cloak. We are still worried about your coming out. What a surprise. He is a noble person, a pure person, a moral person, a person who is free from vulgar interests, and a person who is beneficial to the people. Xiao Zhangzi learned from Comrade Bethune in the Chinese class of this world by reciting the last paragraph of. After the recitation was over, Zhang Su didn't say anything more. He asked Tom, you came back from poisoning. Cough cough, don't say that. Tom waved his hand, we just let the half-blood prince stay at home obediently these days and not come out to disturb us. Xiao Zhangzi shook his head, sighed and said, so you let him for a week. I either had diarrhea or a cold, fever and cough every day. No way, his mother is not just the captain of the Gobstones team at Hogwarts, she is quite good at potions. She can always cure her son's illness very quickly. Tom was helpless replied. Then did she find something abnormal in it? Xiao Zhangzi asked. My son fell ill inexplicably for several days in a row, and it is impossible for a mother to have no clue. She started to feel something was wrong this evening, and I was almost discovered, said Tom. We can't put a confusion charm on them. You haven't revealed your secrets during this time, have you? Xiao Zhangzi asked Bengali, I'm most afraid that you can't control yourself. No problem. Answering this question was Tom, who patted his chest. The two of us have been hiding in invisibility cloaks. If anything happens, we will use the confusion spell and the oblivion spell to save the scene. Did this accident report that the kid said the wrong thing? Xiao Zhangzi asked, pointing at the kid who was pouring the batter into the cake mold. Of course, he's the one we're most afraid of, said Tom apprehensively. It's a good thing his mother took some of the inappropriate things he said for him to be bragging. Xiao Zhangzi looked at the two firefighters with interest, and then he couldn't help sighing. This might be the most suitable precautionary measure. Then when do you plan to go back? Xiao Zhangzi asked. Macaulay, who was putting the cake mold into the oven, froze for a moment, and almost dropped the mold in his hand to the ground. According to the plan, he said after a pause, tomorrow we can leave after exchanging snacks. For the next time, Macaulay sat in front of the oven and looked at the cake inside without saying a word, wondering what he was thinking. The others were also affected by him, and sat in the kitchen without saying a word, and the tools used to make the cake just now had been cleaned and put back. The last meeting between the two children on the second day was tinged with sadness. Not far away, Xiao Zhangzi, who cast the illusion spell on himself, saw the two women exchanging small baskets full of snacks. Everyone wiped away tears. Xiao Zhangzi looked at Aunt Petunia in the Lolita period with some surprise. Unexpectedly, Aunt Petunia 30 years ago was only a delicate flower. But this scene in front of me is not scientific and not magical at all. How did Aunt Petunia get mixed up with the two of them? Has someone put a spell on Aunt Petunia? It seems that when we go back, we have to arrest Harry and torture him. We have to ask him how he reconciled the conflict between the two sisters. But judging from the later history, the conflict between the two sisters did not disappear because of this short episode. After thinking for a while and finding that he couldn't figure it out, he simply gave up thinking. He didn't ask about Harry's experiences in the past 2 weeks in detail, he just satisfies his desire for gossip when he goes back. At this moment, Xiao Zhangzi suddenly turned his head and found a disabled child dragging a sick body to the vicinity with difficulty. Two people hugging before parting. Chapter 532. That night. Help! Help! In order to have a successful ending to Harry's family-finding trip, and to prevent Snape in normal mode from rushing over and shouting, obviously it was me first, and then being beaten to death by Macaulay on the spot, the grassland suddenly a deep pit big enough and deep appeared, and Mrs. Snape fell into the pit suddenly when caught off guard. It's just that under the effect of magic, his cry for help did not come out of the pit, nor did he see the few onlookers by the pit. Do you need to fill it with some soil? It's not good to do that. Well, it's really not good. If Neville came, I'm afraid he would have started pouring dragon dung in it by now. Maybe there will be another bucket of dragon piss, so that we can pick Kazuki's Snape in autumn. I said enough is enough for you two. Don't say such disgusting things again. Then what do you think we should do with him now? Hey, let's revise his memory a little bit. How about I change him to a character that actually likes boys in my heart? Forget it, let me modify his memory for him. After adjusting the memory for the hapless guy in the pit, the time-traveling quartet overfulfilled the era and left 1968. In 1981, there were too many major events in the UK that deserved the attention of the British people. In July, Prince Charles, who has been a prince for 7 years, married the daughter of a viscount. In September, the Soviet Union held the Western Nine exercise, which shocked the world with the idea of attacking Western Europe, causing the whole of Western Europe to cry. Whether France can declare its surrender before the Soviet army invades Paris has become a hot topic. On the last day of October, the wizards in another world on British soil were stunned by a sudden good news. The Dark Lord who had occupied their nightmares for more than 10 years finally gave his head, and the dawn of peace in the wizarding world finally appeared. It's just that no one in the UK this year could have imagined that after only 16 years, the enviable couple at the wedding of the century had divorced, and the Soviet Union that had made them terrified had gone with a breeze and turned into there was a white cloud, but Voldemort came back. The one who thought it was about to come finally left, and the one who thought it was finally left came back. There is nothing more unsatisfactory in life. Next. Xiao Zhangzi threw a can to Macaulay, who was standing beside the ruins. Macaulay, who had turned back to his 17-year-old appearance, almost failed to catch the flying can, and then he pulled the can and poured it into his mouth. The strange taste burst out of his mouth distracted him from the endless pulled out of grief. Just as he finished drinking a can of Laotian white flower snakegrass water and was about to throw away the empty can, a familiar voice sounded behind him. "Who are you?" Macaulay shook his body, and then turned around slowly. He saw Dumbledore, who was still hale and hearty despite his beard and hair all white. "My name is Macaulay Culkin, and I'm a friend of James. I was a guest at James' house 13 years ago." The deep sadness in his tone made Dumbledore sigh. "Leonardo DiCaprio." Xiao Zhangzi also introduced himself. "I'm Macaulay's friend. James once asked me about American wizards. He said he used to have a good friend from America." Dumbledore said in a deep voice, "Do you know Newt Scamander? I heard that his granddaughter just born." Macaulay and Xiao Zhangzi looked at each other, then shook their heads helplessly. They could understand Dumbledore's suspicion and language temptation at this time, and it would not be a good thing if there were Death Eaters blocking here. Mr. Scamander's grandson Reva Scamander is 1 year old this year, but I haven't heard that he has a little granddaughter recently. The granddaughter of the former pseudo-Scamander replied. History turned a corner 10 years ago, when Newt Scamander left England to settle in the United States, and then his news rarely appeared on the British border. Seeing that the other party knew the latest situation of his old friend, Dumbledore's guard was slightly relaxed. James and his family. Dumbledore stopped in the middle of speaking, because he saw that Macaulay's eyes were already bursting with tears, and there was no way to fake that sad expression. For a while, the three of them stared at the ruins in front of them in a daze. They didn't know what to say about this matter. Dumbledore left shortly after, and the remaining two knew he was going to hand Harry over to the Dursleys. Is it Dumbledore who left just now? A strange wizard wearing a pointed wizard hat came out from the shadows. Is the mysterious man really defeated? The wizard's voice was full of excitement, anticipation and apprehension. Xiao Zhang walked over and said to the wizard, "Yes, the mysterious man was defeated by the children of the Potter family." "Really?" the wizard exclaimed excitedly. The next moment, he found a young man crying not far away, and he asked in surprise, "Then the Potters have died?" Xiao Zhangzi said in a low voice. "What?" The wizard was obviously frightened by the news. Didn't they escape from the mysterious man 3 times? Xiao Zhangzi shook his head wordlessly. The excited expression on the wizard's face disappeared without a trace in an instant, and then he took off his hat and stood in silence in front of the ruins of Potter's house together with several wizards who came to inquire about the news. Xiao Zhangzi left space for Macaulay, and kept stopping the wizards who came to inquire about the news not far away. Then he cast a spell to expel muggles nearby, making the nearby muggles who were attracted by the explosion sound stunned for a while, and then remembered that he had more important things to do. When there were no more wizards coming over, the night was deep, and a crescent moon in the sky was about to fall from the west, while the fireworks celebrating in the night sky became more and more beautiful. Just when Xiao Zhangzi walked up to Macaulay, there was a sound of meow meow from the ruins beside him. An orange cat staggered to the side of the two of them. It passed Xiao Zhang and stopped beside Macaulay, and then kept rubbing its head against the other's feet. "I think it's the Seeker," Xiao Zhangzi said while handing a pack of dried fish to Macaulay. "It seems that it recognized you." Lupin and Black once told Harry about his family. The Potter family had a cat named Seeker, who was almost killed by little Harry riding a toy broomstick. Macaulay, who wiped away his tears, squatted down and gently stroked the cat at his feet a few times, and fed it some dried fish, then raised his head and wanted to say something to Xiao Zhangzi, but was given by Xiao Zhangzi interrupted. "If you want to take it back, go ahead, it's not too dangerous," Xiao Zhangzi said. "If you want to take something back, look for it quickly, otherwise these things won't be cheap." "Who is it?" After Xiao Zhangzi finished speaking, he went to the side to help watch the wind. He had to ask Macaulay to find something to divert his attention. Tonight, Macaulay witnessed the whole process of his parents being killed, Snape coming a step late, Black arriving and Hagrid taking him away, and then together with Tom Cruise and Halle Berry, he collected the remains of his parents, and let the latter take the body to a nearby chapel for burial, and finally met Dumbledore. At this time this series of sad events was enough to break him down. So Xiao Zhangzi had to find something for him to do, so that he could divert his attention in the first place, so as to relieve the sadness in his heart. And Xiao Zhang didn't believe that the only gold coins and gringotts left by the Potter family to Harry, because there are many things more valuable than gold coins to wizards. Black's dilapidated home kept enough to feed a thief, and the Lestrange family's coffers had plenty of goodies. As a result, when Harry returned to the wizarding world, he was really poor with only money left as for other goodies. Who knows, after the death of the Potters, among their three best friends, one hid after bringing Voldemort here, one entered Azkaban for revenge, and one was a werewolf who was not easy to come forward, but they didn't. A man could stand up and rightfully help Harry guard the property that was rightfully his. So he let the legal heir of the Potter family act first, and he took what he should get first. The moon in the west has completely sunk below the horizon, and the sky is still lit up with magical fireworks and spells from time to time. What the two of them didn't expect was that they actually found a lot of good things in the ruins, and Macaulay watched these things fall into an endless loop of thinking, these things in the house did not fall into my hands 6 years ago. Were they divided up by others, or were they taken away by me in advance? Just as they were about to pack these things away, another familiar voice sounded behind them. "What are you doing?" The familiar stern tone made the two young men shrink their necks reflexively. Macaulay said confidently to Professor McGonagall, who suddenly appeared, "Madam, we are friends of the Potters. We helped him pack these things in order to give them to his son, so as to prevent things that originally belonged to Harry from being stolen. Someone else snatched it. But I've never seen you." Professor McGonagall looked disbelieving. Unlike Dumbledore, who was in a hurry to deliver little Harry to the Dursleys, Professor McGonagall was, percent suspicious of their identities, and looked at him like a thief. The two of them. It took Macaulay a while to explain his relationship with the Potters to Professor McGonagall, so he also took out a photo with James back then to testify. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 533, The Last Station. Degree. With the sound of a huge explosion, a deep crater exploded in the center of the street. The water pipe buried in the ground was blown off, and a tall water column sprayed out from the breach of the water pipe like a fountain, and then flowed into the sewer that was also blown open. Around the deep pit, the corpses of innocent victims were lying all over the ground, and the frightened passers-by screamed and ran for their lives. A dark-haired young man stood laughing at what appeared to be a small body of what appeared to be a right index finger, until he was escorted away by 20 patrolmen from the Magical Law Enforcement Squad. Fudge, the Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Magical Disasters, was busy directing his subordinates to deal with the aftermath. On the roof of a building not far away, 4 people and 1 cat witnessed everything that happened on the street just now. "Let's go back," a young man hugging his orange cat said. "Okay, let's take a fueling capsule later, and then sneak back to Hogwarts," Xiao Zhangzi said, The news of the mysterious men's failure must have reached Hogwarts, and today is another on Sunday. I don't know how lively Hogwarts will be like now. In case we are discovered by the celebrating students, let's make preparations first. The effect of a drop of fueling medicine is 1 day, while the effect of the diluted and encapsulated fueling capsule is about an hour. As long as you don't drink too much in a short period of time, there will be no side effects. At this time, it is not a good idea to break into Hogwarts illegally, especially against the background that the Longbottoms were tortured by Death Eaters into Street to Doubt. In the early hours of this morning, they finally settled Professor McGonagall. If they were caught by Professor McGonagall again in Hogwarts, they might have to learn from Black and swim back from Azkaban. It's just that fueling capsule told them that if they don't want to be dragged by the reveling wizards to celebrate together at Hogsmeade, it's best to wait until the wizards are tired tonight before acting. The celebrating wizard even prevented some of them from going to the secret passages in Hogsmeade. "Where should we go now?" asked Tom Cruise, who had just dismissed a witch who came to him for a drink with a glass. Now the whole of Hogsmeade is full of carnival wizards. The Three Broomsticks Bar and the Pig's Head Bar coincidentally put drinks on the long tables on both sides of the entrance. Every wizard who celebrated the arrival of the peaceful day took out a few coins and threw them on the table, then pick up the glass or bottle and toast with the people around, whether they know each other or not. It's just that they are the only 4 wizards within a 10-kilometer radius who can't be happy, and their feeling of being out of tune with everyone makes them feel very uncomfortable staying here. I know that there is a cave on the mountainside in the north. That cave is big enough, we can go there to rest. Xiao Zhangzi said, I think it's better for us to show up in crowded places as little as possible. As soon as Xiao Zhangzi finished speaking, a large glass of beer was stuffed into his arms, and it was not the low-alcohol butterbeer that he usually drank as a drink, and the one who gave him the beer was a witch who was older than him, and she looked a little familiar. She probably passed by on platform 9 of the train station just looking at the other party's winking eyes. It seems that if I not now, maybe I can go to Hogwarts with my own son or daughter when I go back. She is Blaise Chabini's mother. A voice rang softly in Xiao Zhangzi's ear. An NBSP, Xiao Zhangzi, who had just finished drinking beer, trembled suddenly, then stuffed the empty glass back to the other party, then turned around and greeted the other 3 people and a cat to go out of the village, so angry that he spent the next 10 years. Mrs. Chabini, who has lost a husband in an average of more than 2 years, stopped there. It was already very cold in Hogsmeade in October, but the inside of the cave with a bonfire was as warm as spring, and the sharp cold wind from the mountains could not break into this somewhat curved cave. Sitting at the entrance of the cave and blowing the cold wine to calm himself down, Xiao Zhang is glad that the love potion mixed with beer is not of much use to him, otherwise today's level will be sad. Not long after, someone came out of the cave and sat side by side with Xiao Zhangzi at the entrance of the cave. Why don't you go to sleep for a while? You didn't sleep all night last night. Xiao Zhangzi said. Forget it, I can't sleep. Macaulay said, do you still have that refreshing potion? Xiao Zhangzi thought for a while, and then handed him a bottle of Laotian white flower snakegrass water. It seems that for so many years, he has been drinking this drink as a potion. Do you feel that you have done everything you need to do, so you can prepare to die generously without any regrets? Xiao Zhangzi asked. You can see that, said the guy who had swallowed half a bottle of drink in a bit of surprise. I've seen it a long time ago. Xiao Zhangzi took out a bottle of beer and said while drinking, but it's still too early for you. At least you have to leave a child behind to talk about this kind of thing. Xiao finally resisted the urge to hit someone. It's too early for me to have a child. I'm not like you. As long as you have the courage, you can ask the professor to take maternity leave. When changing the subject, be careful not to put your life on the line. Xiao Zhangzi said, let's talk about where you and Ginny are now. By the way, there's something I've been wanting to talk to you about seriously. What happened to the 2 children that Malfoy entrusted to you? Xiao kicked the ball when he saw that the topic fell on his head again. Pony classmate over there. Oh, Xiao Zhangzi said after sighing, you don't need to worry about this matter. If you want to know, just live well and ask them when they return to Hogwarts after 11 years. I don't know if I can survive this war. Xiao said with a wry smile and shook his head. Do your best. On the battlefield, people live for death and die for life. Xiao Zhangzi said, although Dumbledore was a little unkind, he planned to sacrifice you from the beginning, but that's the end of the matter. Don't be sad, fortunately there is no unparalleled road, and there is still a great hope that you are still alive, Student Zyerly took out the resurrection stone jewelry hanging around his neck, took it up and looked at the sky carefully for a while, and then said, I often feel that this is one of the Deathly Hallows resurrection stones, which appear in fairy tales. Stuff, it feels very magical. Xiao Zhang gave him a sideways glance, and said, You have been playing with the invisibility cloak, one of the Deathly Hallows, for so many years, and I don't see how emotional you are. You should keep this well, and return it when it is used up. Go back, if you lose it, you can use the invisibility cloak to pay for it. You said why didn't he see that this is the resurrection stone? Xiao Li asked a little strangely. Who knows? Xiao Zhang shrugged, you just think he's blind. How about arranging a duel between me and him as soon as possible? Xiao Li said suddenly, I'll get rid of him earlier, or he get rid of me earlier, so that everyone can spend Christmas with peace of mind. Chapter 534 Dawn in number 039, Tea-talk nonsense when you go out. It was impossible to end this war before Christmas, and even if Zhang wanted to, the Ministry of Magic would not agree to do so. If only Voldemort and Harry were to be singled out, just throw Harry into Diagon Alley, and then yell loudly, I am the savior, Harry Potter, and Tom Riddle dares to fight me to the death. Guaranteed. Even if Voldemort was sitting on the toilet, he would appear in Diagon Alley the first time without even flushing the water. Such an idea is really tempting. When someone Zhang quietly revealed this plan to Minister of Magic Scrimgeour was obviously very interested in this plan, but he finally shelved it after weighing it over and over again. This plan it would be no fun if so many dark wizards from abroad lost their heads to restrain them and spread out to become bandits on the British Isle. If you kill the mysterious man before destroying his henchmen, then his henchmen will inevitably take cruel revenge on you, the people around you, and even the whole society. Like what happened to the Longbottoms yesterday, it will be played on a massive scale across the UK. Xiao Zhangzi took a sip of beer, took out 2 pieces of dried fish from a bag next to him to drink, and continued, so the idea of the Ministry of Magic now is to rely on Hogsmeade and Hogwarts, eliminate as many of the Death Eaters as possible, and then execute the decapitation at the end. After listening carefully to Xiao Zhangzi's analysis, student Xiaoli couldn't help but sigh deeply. Things have developed to the point where he is no longer able to decide by himself. Xiao Zhangzi also sighed beside him. The wind in the mountains was getting stronger and stronger, and the temperature was getting colder and colder, but under the effect of magic, the 2 people sitting by the entrance of the cave didn't feel how cold it was. But neither of them intends to go back to the cave. Now there are lonely men and widows in the cave. It will be bad if they go in and encounter some embarrassing things. After a moment of silence, Xiao Zhangzi suddenly remembered something, so he asked, You didn't come back this time just to see your parents. I always think you have other purposes in it. Xiao Li took 2 small dried fish, one for the cat and the other for himself. After listening to Xiao Zhangzi's question, he nodded and said, The other purpose is to verify whether Snape's words are credible. When did you get in touch with Snape? Xiao Zhangzi asked strangely, Did he contact you last time in Hogsmeade? You can see the name of the sheep in the kitchen on the Marauder's map. Xiao Li said, And the wool of the sheep is so greasy, so I was a little suspicious at first. It's just that I went to the Animagus. I've been thinking about it in the same direction, but I didn't expect there to be such a magic spell as changing sheep. I still wonder who let him go. Xiao Zhangzi said, And if the spell is forcibly broken, it will leave sequelae. That's why he had 2 ram's horns on his head. Xiao Li said nonchalantly. In his eyes, it didn't matter if Snape turned into a leg of lamb with anti-joint legs. What did he tell you? Xiao Zhang was a little curious. Did Snape tell Harry about his youthful love history now? He said that I can absolutely trust him. Xiao Li said, He also talked about the matter between him and my mother. Then he asked Xiao Zhangzi, You already know those things, don't you? I have my own source of information. Xiao Zhangzi said vaguely. Then why didn't you tell me? Xiao Li continued to ask. Xiao Zhangzi laughed. What was the relationship between you and Snape before? I don't know if I told you these things at that time. What kind of spell do you think you would use to seal my mouth? Classmate Xiao Li had nothing to say. If someone told him that Snape was in love with his mother, he would cast a curse on the other person's face every minute. Xiao Zhangzi took out a bottle of beer and handed it over. It could be seen that the child was tortured by this problem. Fortunately, Snape didn't buy oranges for Xiao Li, which is great news. Are you saying Snape loved my mother? Degree Xiao Zhangzi was almost choked to death by Xiao Li's words. He wiped the beer from his clothes and asked, "How did you think of asking me such a question?" "Because you have more experience than us in this area." Xiaoli said naturally, "You have so many girlfriends, you must have your own unique insights in this area." "No, let's go and play." Xiao Zhangzi waved his hand like chasing bugs. "Don't say that, it's obvious, and everyone knows it." Xiao Li is not so easily intimidated by him now. "You have a girlfriend yourself, why don't you think about it yourself?" Xiao Zhangzi asked. "The problem is that what I came up with is not consistent with what Snape said." Xiao Li shook his head and said, "Take myself as an example. I love Ginny, and at the same time I can accept Ginny's family. Just like you and Miss Gabriel have a very good relationship. Uncle Vernon loves Aunt Petunia very much." He said, "No, I had a bad opinion of Aunt Petunia because my mother was a wizard, and Uncle Vernon really wanted to get on with my parents in the first place. And those two in the back cave, their families can accept each other's families. But as far as I know, although Snape said he loves my mother, he has always looked down upon, even despised Aunt Petunia, and never regarded Aunt Petunia as my mother's family. His approach is different from others. Do you think this is love? Then what's the answer you got yourself?" Xiao Zhangzi asked. "It's actually a sense of identity, not love." Xiao Li said seriously, "Because my mother was the first wizard Snape knew who was recognized by each other, so Snape regarded her as his own. The first light I encountered in the magical world illuminated the darkness. Actually, just like Hagrid and I, Hagrid was the first wizard I knew, and he brought me into the world of magic. Although he has some shortcomings, it doesn't affect the relationship between me and him friendship. And there is also the issue of worldview, outlook on life, and different values. Snape and my mother have almost nothing in common. It's fine if you have your own answer in your heart, and you can judge this matter yourself." Xiao Zhangzi nodded and said, "I never thought you would use your brain to think about problems. Although my brain is not as good as yours, it doesn't mean I don't have a brain." Xiao Li went crazy. He didn't accept the other party's accusation that his brain was just a display. But recklessness still dominates in the core. Xiao Zhangzi shook his head and said, "Just like our time travel this time, this is not a solution that a person with a good brain came up with to solve the problem. Laughing last is the best laugh. Maybe we'll be in big trouble next time." A few hours later, Zhang, who returned to 1997, really wanted to use the time converter to go back to this time again, slap himself a few times, and let you raise flags randomly if you have nothing to do. Chapter 535, A Problematic Return. The night was deep, and a silver moon hung in the night sky. From time to time, under the moonlight, black shadows flew by silently. At this time, many owls kept in the Hogwarts owl room were silently circling and flying in the night sky, looking for the mice that came out to look for food at night. Harry's group of 3 and 1 cat felt like a group of mice surrounded by owls, and the professors headed by Professor McGonagall surrounded them like owls. After the first mouse that was caught answered Professor McGonagall's question, Professor McGonagall waved his hand, and Professor Scarlet dragged the unlucky rat that hadn't had time to change back to its original appearance to the empty classroom next door. Period. Now Harry and the others have to worry about it. According to the original plan, they will make 2 or 3 adjustments when they return in 1981, in order to reduce the return time error to within 2 to 4 hours, because when they left Saturday night. However, when they came back for the first time, they found that they arrived 4 days after they left, and the next moment my meow appeared in front of them, and then turned back into Professor McGonagall in less than 2 minutes. Professors from all walks of life came to this classroom one after another. Hermione straightened out the cause and effect immediately. If they were blocked by the professors now, it meant that they could not go back to 4 days ago in this way. It means that several of them have been missing for 4 days, and after several of them disappeared 4 days ago, Ginny, as an insider, would inevitably report their actions to Professor McGonagall, who was starting to go crazy after Professor McGonagall heard the news. He would definitely come here and wait for them to come back. Since Professor McGonagall is waiting for them here, it is inevitable that they will be caught. Hermione quietly told Harry and Ron about this string of ins and outs, and they were both stunned. And Xiao Zhangzi, who hadn't had time to change back to his original appearance, was found by Professor McGonagall immediately, because according to the past practice, this guy planned and organized such audacious things. It's just that this case really wasn't his handiwork. At most he would fill in the gaps and provide tools for the crime, and the mastermind of this case is Harry Potter. So he sold Harry right away. In the end, Professor McGonagall could only shake his head and say to the three of them, Potter, Weasley and Granger, you go to the principal's office to clarify this matter. Lupin and Black, you also follow. Harry and the others could only lower their heads, followed Professor McGonagall and the others out of the classroom, passed by the scene of domestic violence next door where don't slap your face and ping pong pong sounds, and finally came to the principal's office. Just when Harry followed Professor McGonagall into the principal's office nervously, the domestic violence scene on the 5th floor came to an end. Okay, it's just been missing for 4 days, so don't be so angry. Zhang Su, who found a chance to transform back, said to Scarlet. I didn't hit you because of this. Scarlet said angrily. What's that? Zhang Su was a little confused. 29 years ago Scarlet gritted his teeth and reminded someone Zhang, I really lost my head that day sigh. Mr. Zhang sighed, then knelt down skillfully and put his hands on his head. Don't slap your face. It is natural to hide things like Black history as deep as possible, but what I didn't expect was that some players who didn't follow the routine dude, she is actually the initiator of Black history, so what else can she do besides beating her up? Anyway, no one knew what happened that night, but the next morning, the 4 people caught yesterday all appeared in the Hogwarts cafeteria with dark circles under their eyes. Where have you been? Luna asked Zhang Su, poking his side ribs with a fork handle in her hand. Some things are busy. Zhang Su replied, while helping Luna pick up a piece of fried egg and put it on her plate. Oh, let me know in advance next time. Luna said. No problem. Zhang Su replied. Soon after, the Owl Rain came as scheduled, and Zhang Su also got his subscription to the Daily Prophet. Opening the newspaper, the headline on the front page was that the Minister of Magic, Lucius Malfoy, was meeting Heinz Sephro and other advanced tax collectors at the Ministry of Magic. The second article on the front page was that the Ministry of Magic's tax revenue in 1997 hit a record high. How did they do it? Zhang Su asked Anthony Goldstein, who was sitting opposite him in surprise. As a Jew, Anthony has a lot of family background in economic issues. They kept the tax until 1999, Anthony replied. Then next year, don't you need to pay taxes? Terry Butte, who was sitting on the side, asked naively. I bet a pound of BBs that they'll have a 2000 to 2003 tax next year, Michael Kerner told his buddy. Zhang Su, who was sitting across from them, finally understood that the achievements of this taxation were achieved by killing chickens to get eggs, but he didn't know when the tax 50 years later would start to be collected. They levy taxes like this, there should be quite a few people who oppose it. Zhang Su asked Anthony and the others. Yes, some people don't want to pay taxes to those Death Eaters, but they were injured by Death Eaters, Anthony said. My house was okay. The neighbors called the Aurors when the Death Eaters came to the door. Michael Corner said, the Aurors arrived shortly after, and the 3 Death Eaters caught 2, and the other run away after being injured. At this time, all the breakfast on the dining table disappeared, and Zhang Su and Anthony walked out of the cafeteria while continuing to chat about this topic. The first class this morning was Potions class. In the class, Professor Sprout asked the students to fertilize the mushrooms in the greenhouse. During the day, the mushrooms sleep. Unless they are poured coffee, they will not wake up even if they take a bite. Don't be distracted, Zhang. Professor Sprout reminded Zhang Su, who had fertilized a mushroom too much. Why, I didn't sleep well last night. Professor Sprout gave Zhang Su a funny face. She participated in the activity of watching the group of 4 people and 1 cat yesterday. She also knew that someone was domestically abused. No. Zhang Su shoveled the excess fertilizer back into the fertilizer bucket. I'm just thinking about how to deal with the destruction mushroom so they can be eaten. Because of the characteristic of the destruction mushroom that explodes when it is seriously injured, Zhang, who had been thinking about it for a long time, couldn't do it for a while. Professor Sprout has become accustomed to Zhang Su's thoughts. She said, I will plant a few destruction mushrooms in your dormitory some other day, and you can study them slowly. Chapter 536. Today's weather is fine, breezy and sunny, not windy, not rainy, but sunny in the sky. At 5 minutes to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the Owens prepared refreshments in the garden, ready to receive the guests who arrived at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Since their son Michael Owen went to Hogwarts to study 2 months ago, the Owen couple also came to that colorful world together. The Owens first received an invitation from Mr. Andrew Hanna's family who lived across the door. Only then did Mrs. Owen know that the strange neighbors who lived across the door were actually wizards. No wonder they were often seen nearby. There are owls flying. In that surprising and unforgettable invitation to the Owens, they saw all kinds of magic used in daily life, and got news that there were several other wizarding families in their community. After some deliberation, the Owens decided to build a 7-star stove, cook 3 rivers in a copper pot, set up a table of 8 immortals, entertain the 16 parties, invite all the big shots in the community to their home, recognize the mountain gate and pay their respects to the pier. At exactly 3 o'clock, the Hannahs brought Jimmy Rose, John McCartney, Mark Wright and other wizards and their friends to the home of the Owens. At the end, Mr. Hannah introduced the last visitor to the Owens. This is Mr. Granger from London. He is the president of the Muggle Parents Mutual Aid Association. Seeing the blank expressions of the Owen couple, Mr. Granger explained to the two of them, "Mrs. Owen, sir, my wife and I are ordinary people like you, and our children are all in Hogwarts. A wizard studying. Because many parents like us are ignorant or even prejudiced against wizards, some wizard children in some families are prejudiced or even abused. For example, they are treated like monsters, cannot appear in front of guests, and have to live without their own rooms. In the cupboard. So my wife and I contacted some parents like us to form the Muggle Parents Mutual Aid Association, trying to help those families who have communication barriers and even prejudices between ordinary parents and wizard children. The idea of the Grangers to set up the Muggle Parents Mutual Aid Association began when they learned about Harry Potter's tragic childhood life. After in-depth discussions with the Wheeleyes and Hermione's matchmaking, this a non-profit amateur organization was established. Mr. and Mrs. Owen are also very interested in this organization. Mr. Owen said, "I think we already need your help. There are many things in Owen's letter that we can't understand. For example, he is now obsessed with riding a broom. Flying in the sky. There is also a sport called Quidditch played on a broom. No problem." Mr. Granger took out a business card from his pocket and handed it to Mr. Owen. Because our members are located in England, Scotland, Wales and other places, it makes the meeting between our members somewhat difficult. So we generally use the internet to communicate, and you only need to join the chat group behind the business card to get in touch with everyone. Thank you. Mr. Owen put away the business card. "I thought we also used owls to communicate." Mr. Granger said with a smile, "Of course we ordinary people have to use our own methods. With the development of technology, ordinary people will not lag behind wizards in some fields." In the following time, the guests first introduced the knowledge about broomsticks and Quidditch to the Owen couple, and then mentioned the recent unrest in the magical society. "Then we ordinary people don't seem to be able to fight back against those evil wizards?" Mrs. Owen asked worriedly. Then the wizards present all looked at Mr. Granger. The Owen couple who noticed their move also looked at Mr. Granger strangely. "I fisted the now villainous Minister of Magic to the beat-up. Mr. Granger said with some embarrassment. "I also managed to sneak attack by taking advantage of his underestimation." After Lao Ma became the Minister of Magic, some people naturally disliked him, so his dark history often appeared in the Daily Prophet for a while. "Don't worry about your safety, as long as you call the police immediately, we and the Aurors will be there soon." The young wizard Mark Wright said to the Owens, "If necessary, you can give in to win some time." After this pleasant afternoon tea, the Owen family began to integrate into the small group of wizards around them. What the Owens didn't expect was that the accident happened so quickly. That morning, when Mr. Owen came to the garage after breakfast and was about to drive to London for a meeting, Mr. Owen, who was sitting in the car, suddenly heard a violent quarrel coming from the gate of the opposite Hannah family. 4 people in black robes and black hoods appeared in front of the gate of Hannah's house, arguing with Mr. Hannah. Through the door Mr. Owen heard the words "pay the tax" and "window tax" and the voice from across the way. Mr. Owen, who has studied British economic history, can be sure that the other party was not sent by the British Treasury, because the British window tax was abolished in 1851. Not long after, the wizards in black robes who came to collect taxes pulled out their wands and aimed at the door of Hannah's house. At this moment, several bright lights shot at these black-robed wizards from a distance. It was Jimmy Ross, John McCartney, Mark Wright and others who came to help, and Mark Wright even sat for a while. The flying broom rushed over. "If I can also ride a broom like this, then I won't be troubled by traffic jams in London," Mr. Owen thought while looking enviously at the broom flying in the sky. However, a burst of explosion brought Mr. Owen, who was obsessed with flying on a broomstick over the city of London and laughing at the traffic jam on the ground, back to reality. A wizard in a black robe blasted the door of Hannah's house with some magic. The thick smoke from the door blocked a view into the house. At this time, Jimmy Rose was already lying on the ground, and his twitching body showed that he was not dead yet. Mr. Owen, who saw the battle between wizards for the first time, curled up in the cab, hoping that the wizards in black robes would not find him. At this moment, there was another crisp explosion sound in the fear, followed by the shouts of more people. Mr. Owen, whose curiosity overwhelmed his desire to survive, slowly raised his head. Through the car window, he saw a group of wizards wearing certain uniforms and army battle uniforms besieging the 4 black-robed wizards, and soon a black-robed wizard was knocked down. At this moment, Mr. Owen heard his wife screaming from behind the door of his house. He turned his head and saw his wife covering her mouth with her hands and watching the battle outside the door in panic. The wizards in black robes noticed Mrs. Owen's cry, and they rushed towards the Owen family's house immediately. Realizing that the situation was not good, the reinforcements immediately tried desperately to stop the 3 black-robed wizards, but the black-robed wizard who rushed to the front used his fallen comrades as a shield to easily break through the opponent's line of defense. When the second black-robed wizard was defeated, the other followed suit and used his companion as a shield. The reinforcements were caught off guard, and the 2 people standing in front of the black-robed wizard were injured and fell to the ground. When Mr. Owen in the car saw 2 black-robed wizards covering each other back to back and about to rush to his yard, his mind went blank, and the image of his wife falling to the ground like everyone else flashed through his mind. Mr. Owen, whose hands and feet were trembling, subconsciously sat down and started the car in the shortest possible time, put it in gear, and stepped on the accelerator to the end and rushed towards the 2 black-robed wizards. Chapter 537 The Encounter with St. Mungory. Since its establishment, St. Mungo's Magical Injury Hospital has never been as busy as it is now. Patients are constantly being brought in. Anxious family members are waiting at the front desk for the staff to find information about their loved ones. The whole hall is like a livestock market in the countryside. Generally noisy and chaotic. Especially those glaring Death Eaters and Aurors. The wounded among them may have been wounded by the opponent in the first minute. Fortunately, both parties are well aware of the importance of St. Mungo's, and Mr. Zhang, who is in the middle of the communication, will definitely work hard as long as he receives the benefits, so the personnel of both parties resisted the urge to do it at the request of their leaders. Michael Owen, who came out of the fireplace, looked at the messy scene in front of him, and didn't know what to do next for a moment. "Follow me, don't get lost." Professor Flitwick tugged on Michael's robe, motioning him to follow him. It's just that in a place like this, it's challenging to keep up with Professor Flitwick at this time. Michael developed a sense of déjà vu that football brought him extraordinary. After finally squeezing in front of the service desk, they queued for 10 minutes and waited for another 2 minutes for the staff to check the admission records. The 2 finally found out the ward where Mr. Owen lived. When Professor Flitwick brought Michael to the door of the ward, they heard a burst of laughter from the ward. Michael couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief when he heard his father's laughter. Seeing his son walking into the ward, Mr. Owen waved his left hand and said, "Michael, this way." "Father, what's the matter with you?" Michael trotted to his father's hospital bed and asked while looking at his bandaged right hand. "It's nothing, just treated as being stung by a wasp, and it will be fine in a few days." Mr. Owen comforted his son and said, "Before I drove them into the air, a guy raised his hand and gave me a shot, just in time to hit them. Hit my right hand and they sent me here. The doctors here are really good. The broken ribs will be healed after drinking the potion. You should learn how to make the potion in the future, so that we don't have to spend a lot of money to go to the damn hospital." After Mr. Owen comforted his son with a joke, Professor Flitwick on the side stepped forward and introduced himself to Mr. Owen. "Hello, Mr. Owen, I am Phileas Flitwick, the Dean of Michael's College." "Hello, Professor Flitwick." Mr. Owen extended his left hand to shake his hand. "Please bring Michael here." Jimmy Rose, who was lying on the bed next door, also saw Professor Flitwick at this time, and greeted him happily. "Professor Flitwick, I haven't seen you for many years." Professor Flitwick has taught at Hogwarts for many years, and the younger wizards in the ward are all his students, so everyone gets to know each other quickly. Michael also learned what happened in front of the house this morning from everyone's chat. At the last moment of the fight, Mr. Irwin stomped on the gas pedal and sent 2 Death Eaters flying. But moments before the crash, a Death Eater's jinx hit Mr. Owen's right hand, leaving his entire right arm blackened and paralyzed. while another Death Eater's jinx shattered the safety airbag. Mr. Owen, who was not wearing a seatbelt, also hit the steering wheel for this reason and broke several ribs. The two Death Eaters who were knocked down were pinned down on the spot. The car was repaired with charms on the spot and Mr. Owen had to be sent to St. Mungo's for treatment. Where's Mother? Didn't she come? After chatting for a while, Michael found that his mother was not in the ward. Mr. Zhang sent her home to help me ask for leave from the company and get some things. They will come back later, Mr. Owen said. At this moment, Mrs. Owen returned to the ward with a travel bag. After saying hello, Mr. Owen asked a little strangely, "What about Mr. Zhang? Didn't he come back with you?" Mrs. Owen covered her mouth and said with a smile, "Mr. Zhang was dragged by a big beauty in the corridor just now gone." At this time, Zhang was dragged through the corridor by an acquaintance whom he hadn't seen for a long time. "Where are you taking me? I have to go back to school later," Zhang Su said. Michael was in class when news of Mr. Owen's admission reached Hogwarts this morning. And Hogwarts has the biggest class in the world, and the class will not stop if there are basilisks and students watch stones. So Professor McGonagall asked Zhang Su, who had met the Owens and had no class, to check the situation first because the news from St. Mungo is not detailed. If it is the worst case, you can come back and inform the family members to be mentally prepared. It's just that he just took Mrs. Owen home, and came back after finishing some things, but was dragged away by Wales in the corridor. "Take you to meet someone, and cooperate with me when the time comes," Welsh said to Zhang Su. "Who?" Zhang Su asked. "Enemy," the other party said through gritted teeth. Taking all aspects into consideration, St. Mungo arranged the Aurors and Death Eaters on different floors so that they would not fight again if they couldn't control themselves. Aurors and Death Eaters also tacitly follow the policy of not causing trouble, and it is better to cause trouble on the other side's territory. Zhang Su, who also didn't want to cause trouble, took out the black skull plate that Voldemort gave him when he came to the floor where the Death Eaters were. Seeing the plate was like seeing the Dark Lord. The Death Eaters in the corridor stepped aside one after another. The two of them stepped out of the way. After walking into a single ward, Wales stared at the Death Eater on the bed with his good eyes, and the Death Eater froze when he saw her. "Is that you, Kimberly?" The Death Eater on the hospital bed suddenly sat up. "It's me, Hein Severo. I haven't seen you for many years." The woman codenamed Wales and whose real name was Kimberly Taylor said. "I didn't expect you to remember me for so many years," Hein said happily. "Of course I remember you," Kimberly said through gritted teeth. "How could I forget the murderer who killed my grandmother's family?" The excited expression on Hein's face immediately froze. Back then, for revenge, he went on a rampage in the village where he lived in his childhood. When he regained his senses, he found that there was no one alive in the village and he didn't realize at the time that among the people he killed were the family members of his childhood dream lover. At this time, Zhang Su, who was standing aside, felt a trembling and pressure from the little hand that was holding him. Who is he? At this moment, Hien found Zhang Su next to his childhood dream lover. The above two spoke German, and Zhang's German was only learned in a simple way when he was playing with a tour guide girl in Germany, so he couldn't understand the other party's content except the name. "Remember this face?" Kimberly ignored the other party's question, but pointed to the Death Eater on the bed and said to Zhang Su in English, "If you see him outside in the future, please capture him alive and hand him over to me. I can promise you any conditions and do anything for you." As if to irritate the other party, or perhaps to charge Zhang Su a higher price, she emphasized the pronunciation of the word "any." Zhang Su understood in a second, and put his backhand around her waist very cooperatively, staring at the mountain peak in front of her chest, and said in a few Germans he only knew, "No problem, baby." Hien on the hospital bed was so angry that his eyes were burning. If he hadn't been temporarily paralyzed from the legs down, he would have hit someone with his wand. But Zhang Su didn't even look at him. He hugged the beautiful woman beside him intimately and said, "You go out and close the door first, and give me 3 minutes." 5 minutes later, the two left the ward on this floor. "What did you do to him?" Wales asked, regaining his composure. "I ate something, and made some manipulations in his memory," Zhang Su said in a low voice. "When he is discharged from the hospital, he will fall into the trap of himself." Chapter 538 A Sudden Encounter. St. Mungo's Hospital, a neutral place in a war, is often the best place to conduct intelligence warfare. A large number of intelligence personnel from the Ministry of Magic and the British government gathered here, constantly obtaining information about the Death Eaters. At this point, the Death Eaters were completely at a disadvantage because among the Death Eaters, there was no intelligence warfare talent at all, and Snape, who was in charge of this work, could only be regarded as a rookie in terms of intelligence acquisition and intelligence analysis. Snape, who had only been an undercover agent, was blindsided. And the Ministry of Magic consciously passed the false information spread by some Aurors in St. Mungoir, which really made Snape deflated a few times. So when Zhang Su saw Snape in the hall of St. Mungo's hospital, he found that his face was much worse than before. The one who looked worse than Snape was Professor Flitwick, who was going to leave St. Mungo's with Zhang Su and the others. It was he who informed Snape that a Death Eater had infiltrated Hogwarts on the day Dumbledore was killed. As a result, he was conspired by Snape and fainted to the ground. Since then, this matter has become an unresolved knot in Professor Flitwick's heart. If Zhang Su hadn't pulled him aside, he would have pulled out his wand on the spot, and Snape had a face full of embarrassment. It's just that all Zhang Su can do is to prevent Professor Flitwick from doing anything in St. Mungo's. To make him ignore Snape, Zhang can't do it. For a while, the two sides confronted each other like this. Professor Flitwick looked at Snape with eyes full of anger. Snape responded with an expressionless cold face. Zhang Su stood aside, and Michael Owen pulled him behind him. The people in the hall quickly spotted the faces of the confrontation. Snape was now known to the Death Eaters as their top leader, and the Aurors were almost all once Professor Flitwick's students, so the fragile peace began to slowly break down, and the Aurors and Death Eaters began to divide into two camps and stand on their side. Zhang Su saw that several young Death Eaters were taken aback when they found out that Professor Flitwick was on the other side of the confrontation. After hesitating for a moment, they stood behind Snape. Seeing that the scene in the hall was about to get out of control, Professor Flitwick and Snape turned around and walked out of the gate at the same time, followed by their respective people. After Zhang Su stuffed Michael Owen into the fireplace and sent him back to Hogwarts, he followed him to the street outside St. Mungo's. Aurors and Death Eaters stood in front of Tao Company, Limited. Professor Flitwick and Snape stood in front of the crowd respectively, and the whole scene looked like the gangsters on both sides were about to start a fight. Both sides of the street were obviously cast with a Muggle-repelling curse, and there were only wizards on the whole street who were at war. Zhang Su did not join the crowd, but walked around the Auror side from behind, and then got into a small building where there was no one there. It was a good spot to fire. A machine gun on an upstairs windowsill could cover the Death Eaters in the street below. But it's too much for a foreigner to shoot on the streets of London. Maybe the embassy will receive another protest from the British Foreign Office. However, the chances of the Prime Minister taking the opportunity to invite the ambassador to lunch may be higher. The confrontation in the street below could be seen through the battered curtain, as Professor Flitwick and Snape had put with a wand out. It depends on whether it will be a duel between the two and then a melee, or a melee will start directly. And the reinforcements from both sides are constantly coming out of Tao Company, Limited. The agreement between the Ministry of Magic of the two sides is only valid within St. Mungo's, and it's easy to go out of the gate. This time more and more wizards came, which greatly exceeded Zhang Su's expectations. Now this sudden and somewhat confusing encounter has to be launched, but if the number of people continues to increase like this, the commotion will probably disturb the Lafayette in Buckingham Palace. Not long after, the figure of the old horse appeared behind Snape, and at the same time, the professors of Hogwarts rushed over under the leadership of Professor McGonagall after receiving the message from Michael. If Professor McGonagall used the banner of Hogwarts to clean up the house today, the professors would not have to talk about the morals of the rivers and lakes, and everyone would go shoulder to shoulder, and then others would have nothing to say. Hiding in the dark, Zhang Su maximized the early warning range of the original Horcrux detector, which was regarded as Voldemort's detector. The detector did not sound any alarm, which made him temporarily relieved. Flitwick and Snape, who stood at the front, did not speak or move at all, until no one came out of the gate of Tao Company, Limited for a full minute, and then they moved. Flitwick and Snape first performed a dual salute at the same time, and then waved their wands at each other like lightning at the same time. Neither of them made a sound of incantation, but Flitwick, who was a step ahead, shot a bright red spell from his wand, forcing Snape to dodge and finish his spell. A soundless, lightless, colorless sharp edge shot out from Snape's wand. As a result, Flitwick flicked the wand in his hand, and there was a light pop in the air between the two of them. After the sound, there is nothing. Snape frowned slightly, and then figured out the reason during Shen Feng Wuang's solution to the curse. He and Zhang Su met, and it was not impossible for Zhang Su to teach it to his dean. In the next few rounds, Snape found himself a little frustrated. The first is the difference in stature between the two. Snape himself is 186 centimeters tall, while Flitwick is only 107 centimeters tall. The frontal projected area of the opponent is almost half of his own, which makes Snape very uncomfortable. Secondly, Snape found that several of his unique curses were all resolved by Flitwick's use of decursing, and he didn't teach anyone about the decursing of these curses. If Zhang knew what Snape was thinking in his heart, he would gloat and tell him that if he wanted to unravel a wizard's original spell, he would be, % successful as long as he understood the other party's thinking, and Snape left a lot of original spells in his old textbooks, and Zhang also provided the solution to one of the spells. In potions, Snape was the best of the professors, but in charms, Flitwick could beat him to Downing Street. With enough samples, if Flitwick, the professor of charms, couldn't figure out Snape's cards in the spell, he could resign and take over Filch's job. Chapter 539, After discovering that his original spells were useless, Snape began to adjust his tactics, attacking Flitwick with the usual curses and poisons. A series of magic spells emitting colorful rays of light continuously appeared in front of the two of them, either colliding with each other into sparks, or passing by their sides. The onlookers were not only sweating for the two duels in the arena, but also worried for the audience in the front row. The audience in the front row who were less capable had already been carried into St. Mungo's because they were hit by stray bullets. In particular, Flitwick moved coquettishly, causing the aurors behind him to complain, while the Hogwarts professors didn't approach him at all, and they all stood in a corner. Off the field, both of them have been colleagues who have worked together for more than 10 years, and they know at least, % of each other's strength, personality and behavior style. The two people who were attacking and defending each other for a while caused the battle to fall into a stalemate. Now the competition between the two is not who has more means, but who can't resist making mistakes first at this time. Whoever's mistake is caught by the opponent, then what he will face is an overwhelming spell attack. In the end, it was the more experienced Flitwick who broke the deadlock. At the beginning, his spells were all aimed at Snape. When Snape got used to his rhythm, he suddenly took advantage of his short stature and shot out from the wand. A spell flew towards Snape's ankle, facing the curse flying close to the ground. Snape could only take a step to avoid it. I saw a huge fist suddenly burst out from the ground under Snape's feet that was hit by the curse, and knocked Snape, who had no defense against his feet, to the ground. Just when Flitwick was about to take this opportunity to beat the dog in the water, Lucius Malfoy, who was standing behind Snape, suddenly pulled out his wand and attacked Flitwick. The curse of the old horse was like the firing of the starting gun. The wizards of the two sides who had been confronting each other suddenly stopped talking about the morals of the world and cast spells on the opposite side one after another. At this moment, there was a loud boom from the second floor of a house on the side of the road, and a figure exploded out of the house along with the fragments of the wall. 3W. The figure that was blown out fell on the open space between the two sides, who were taken aback by the sudden explosion. After rolling a few times on the ground under the eyes of everyone to remove the impact force, a fist suddenly appeared in his hand. Fijian dragged himself into the sky. Immediately afterwards, everyone on the street was surprised to see the Dark Lord Voldemort flying out of the big hole in the house with black smoke. He ignored the people on the ground, but flew straight into the sky towards the sky those who go chase after them. Now Zhang Su couldn't care less about not being discovered by ordinary people in London. He only knew that what he had to do now was to fly as fast as he could to get rid of Voldemort, who was following him. The murderous Voldemort suddenly appeared behind him just now, so that when the detector responded, he had already arrived. At that time, he knew that the two of them would not die well today. Whether it's for the ownership of the Elder Wand or revenge for the train tunnel, Voldemort had enough reasons to kill Zhang Su today. Zhang Su did not naively think that Voldemort, who had suffered a great loss in his hands, would be as easy to talk to as before. The murderous intent on the other party could not be faked. If he didn't kill himself today, he would definitely not be able to swallow that breath. Although Zhang has a lot of cards to escape, but there are too many acquaintances in front of St. Mungo's gate today. If he doesn't lure Voldemort away first, it will be a big trouble if Voldemort takes out his anger on others. Thought Voldemort would go back to sleep after losing himself. Greek letter Delta Cyrillic letter Tse. Zhang Su looked back and saw Voldemort following him less than 100 meters behind him. This distance was already twice the range of the magic spells of ordinary wizards, so he took out an assault rifle and turned around abruptly. Voldemort is a shuttle, and Voldemort seemed to have been prepared for a long time. A huge shield suddenly appeared in front of him to block his front, and the bullets hit it, and there were little flames. The huge shield blocked the bullets and at the same time blocked Voldemort's sight. Zhang Su took this opportunity to cast an illusion spell on himself, then turned around and flew in another direction. Just when Zhang Su thought he could get rid of Voldemort for a while, his heart suddenly tightened, and he immediately accelerated the flying sword, and at the same time turned, degrees around the forward direction, so that his whole body became parallel to the ground. A few magic spells emitting green light passed behind him. If he hadn't accelerated suddenly just now, he might have been hit by the magic spell that blocked his dodging position. Regardless of the cold sweat that was blown away by the strong wind on his forehead, and no time to ponder why Voldemort could find himself or the flying sword in the disillusionment curse and why his spell had such a long range, Zhang Su only knew that what he had to do now was it kept doing evasive actions and flew away. Without the range advantage and stealth advantage, the original kite flying tactic cannot be used. I just don't know how maneuverable Voldemort is when he is flying. If the maneuverability is not high, you can try the dogfight mode. After turning a few turns, Zhang Su calculated the timing and flew towards the sun suddenly. At this moment, the sun formed a three-point line with him and Voldemort. Zhang Su didn't know why Voldemort saw through the illusion curse, but in his experience, magic and infrared rays were the only ways to see through the illusion curse. There are too many options in magic, let's put it aside, and Voldemort's body transformation is based on a snake. If he has the same infrared perception ability as a snake, then things will be easy to handle. When the infrared-guided air-to-air missiles first came out, directing the missiles to the sun was a very practical way to dodge, but I don't know if this method is applicable to Voldemort. Moreover, in the low temperature and lack of oxygen in the high altitude, it's okay for Zhang to prepare himself. Maybe he can use this to smite Voldemort, but I don't know what his maximum flying altitude is. The sun was shining brightly above the clouds. Zhang Su was wearing the fully enclosed goggles with the goggles already put down. From time to time, he turned his head to see if Voldemort continued to catch up. If the chase was not tight, he would take out the oxygen tank first. Just when Zhang Su turned his head again, he found that Voldemort suddenly disappeared with a pop, and then a shadow appeared in front of him, blocking the light of the sun. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 540. Many years later, a traffic safety publicity program called 10 Minutes a Day, Drive Slowly and Timidly produced an episode of Magic and Generosity. At the end of the program, netizens shook their legs with a rhythm of "You're not ready," while I saw a black figure suddenly appearing at the position where the sun was originally in the video. After a violent shock and a black screen, the picture changed to falling from the clouds at high speed. After passing through the clouds, a big city appeared among the screens. Netizens quickly discovered several famous buildings in London in the falling pictures. Careful netizens also found that London's Millennium Dome and the London Eye did not appear in the video, so it can be inferred that the video was shot in before 2000. So at the end of life does not take two, please act carefully. There is a barrage of series with few foreigners that fills the screen. However, a more careful netizen found that when the video collided for the second time, there was a sound of fuck for less than a second that was covered by BG, but if you listen carefully, you can still hear it owned. Now the internet is full of excitement. A Chinese ran into a person in the sky over London at the end of the last century. Coupled with the chaotic background of the British magical world at that time, the onlookers expressed their dissatisfaction with the fucking brother and suffering in the video. I am very interested in the identity of Bump Brother. For a while, from Weibo to Zombie Island, everyone was discussing the identities of Brother Fuck and Brother Bump. The first person to be found was the uploader of the video. Someone misunderstood the network disk password of traffic accident video. After some searching, it was found that the person who uploaded and shared the video was an international student from the UK. The British student surnamed Lu Ping said in an interview that this video was obtained from her best friend, Brother Bang Bang is her best friend's biological father, and the person who hired him was her father's former colleague. Then almost all the wizards in the UK turned into Brother Fuck, because they had already recognized that Brother Bump was the Dark Lord Voldemort who once made them fearful, and they only knew that Voldemort had another daughter. As for the identity of fucking Brother, discussions about him on the internet suddenly disappeared overnight, as if everyone had never paid attention to him, just like the photo of a giant panda at a certain time and place that has become an internet legend. And when the content in the video happened in 1997, the future fucking brother could no longer care about what will happen in the future, because if he doesn't think about it, Zhang Su, will be smashed into a bad guy. Zhang Su guessed right at the beginning. Voldemort found him under the disillusionment curse by relying on the snake-like infrared sensor. When Zhang Su rushed towards the sun, Voldemort found that his sense of Zhang Su was getting weaker and weaker, so he apparated to the front and tried to get closer to attack. As a result, he was disturbed by the sun and got into the wrong position. Not only did he appear in front of Zhang Su, but he was also hit on the back by Zhang Su, who was not in a hurry to break. When Zhang Su was awakened by the bitter cold wind in the sky, he found that he had passed through the clouds and was falling towards the Thames River. The first thing he thought of was that if he had worn the helmet just now, he might be able to break Voldemort's waist all of a sudden. The second thing I thought of was that I was lucky not to bump into Voldemort's ass. An NBSP. At the third moment, he began to reach into the treasure bag to take out the flying props. He took out the sometimes useless vector thrust broomstick, rode it hard, and then braked. After falling more than 100 meters, he finally stopped the momentum of free fall. Since he didn't know whether Voldemort fell down with him or continued to wait for him in the sky, after seeing that Voldemort was not under the clouds, Zhang Su immediately drove his broomstick into the clouds. The clouds in the sky are actually similar to the thick fog on the ground, and the visibility inside is very low. Sometimes when walking in the dense fog in the early morning, you will hear the sound of the engine not far away, but you can't see any vehicles in the whiteness ahead. So when Zhang Su saw Voldemort flying towards him again, the broomstick under his crotch almost poked Voldemort's forehead with one blow, and then it was used as a holy weapon for exorcising demons and offered in the window specially made by the Ministry of Magic for 3 pillars a day fragrant. And Voldemort also missed the chance to knock Zhang Su's head from the sky to the ground and fall to his death, leaving behind the scourge. The sky over London has been cloudy these days, but it is not raining, which provides Zhang Su with a place to hide and seek. Zhang Su was flying like Brownian motion in the thick clouds, and the clouds around him were dyed green from time to time by the light from the flying spell. And Zhang Su also turned around from time to time to fight back with magic spells. The end of his magic wand is fixed with a rope for missing hands, so he is not afraid of accidentally falling from the air. Zhang Su, who kept turning in the front, found that he could not continue running like this. If he defended for a long time, he would lose. He had to carry out several effective counterattacks, so as to delay the time, and wait until St. Mungo's side was almost finished before he could run away. Period. It's just that the thick clouds not only affected Voldemort, but also affected his sight. It's okay to save his life here, so he had to leave the clouds if he wanted to fight back, so he immediately drove the broomstick to fly upwards. Above the clouds, the sun shines on the thick clouds, which looks like a large ocean of cotton candy, and at the same time has the magnificence of the mountains, and Zhang who rushed out of Yunshan was like a sparrow flying out of the mountains. The moment Zhang Su flew out of the clouds, his eyes, which were just used to the visibility of only a few tens of meters, were dazzled by the glare of the sun, and then he immediately drove the broom to an emergency stop, and then flew towards the cloud mountain beside him. Several roads came from the direction of the sun. The spell just passed him from where he was just now. Now he had a headache. Voldemort was a big boss after all. How could he not bring a few men with him when he went out? There were more and more Death Eaters riding on broomsticks in the sky. Except for Snape and the old horse, all the old Death Eaters had arrived. And these Death Eaters are riding the latest version of the Firebolt. He can't open the plug-in to make these broomsticks useless. As a result, within a few minutes, Zhang Su found himself surrounded by a group of Death Eaters in a huge encirclement, and the encirclement became smaller and smaller. If you don't run it this time, you probably won't be able to run away later. So after the sound of BIU, Zhang Su, who hid in the clouds again, returned to Hogsmeade with his broom. Chapter 541 Letter. The fight in front of St. Mungo's Hospital started off unprepared but ended quickly. After all, London is the capital of the United Kingdom, and it is the first good place. If there is a big movement, the repeated bombing by the opposition party and the media is still a trivial matter. If the London stock market is affected by a certain point and falls for a while, then I don't know how many pounds will evaporate in an instant. This will kill the politicians. Therefore, the British government immediately mobilized a large number of military and police forces to join this sudden security war on the grounds of arresting terrorists. When Zhang Su escaped from the sky and turned into Leonardo Zhang again in order not to provoke Voldemort, he came to St. Mungo's Hospital. The halls of St. Mungo's Hospital were empty at this time, and patients and their families had either been evacuated or evacuated. When Zhang Su came outside the door, the battle was in its final stage. The Death Eaters have been surrounded by ours and the reinforcements who arrived. They were blocked in the not-so-spacious street. Under the command of the old horse, they were thinking about how to retreat while resisting the attacks from two sides. On the other hand, the Aurors and the government forces stepped up their attack, hoping to end the battle before Voldemort returned. Just as the battle ahead was tight, the rear of Hogwarts was tight. It was lunchtime now, and the professors suddenly left in the middle of the class and became the focus of discussion among the students at the dinner table. This kind of thing was extremely rare in the 1,000-year history of Hogwarts. While Harry was dealing with the grilled fish on the plate, he was thinking about how to organize and arrange for the senior students who had no classes to patrol the castle in the afternoon. Just then, an owl fell into his saucer. After taking the letter out from under the feet of the owl covered in tomato juice, Harry lost his appetite, and he would rather go back to the dormitory to eat biscuits than touch the gifts spoiled by the owl again. Who sent the letter? Ginny poked Harry, who had been standing aside for 2 minutes, with her finger, for fear that there was some curse on the letter. Dudley, said Harry in surprise. Dudley will write me a letter. Dudley's letter had indeed come as a shock to Harry, who hadn't heard from the Dursleys since that day, except that they had left England. Ginny, who knew something about the Dursleys, was also taken aback for a moment. She knew how the relatives of the future in-law's family would treat her boyfriend, especially this future cousin who bullied him a lot since childhood. Now the big cousin will write a letter. Is it because the sun is about to rise from the south? Harry estimated that the professors would not be able to come back for a while, so he simply went back to the dormitory to see what Dudley wrote in the letter. Harry returned to his room and sat on the bed without taking off his shoes. His cat named Seeker, brought back from 1981, jumped out from under the bed and jumped on his knees. He tickled the Seeker the way someone had taught him to make him fall asleep comfortably, and opened the envelope. The letter paper used in the letter is not the parchment paper commonly used by wizards, but the letter paper used by muggles to write letters. Dear Harry, the very beginning made Harry shiver, and such an image appeared in Harry's mind. A fat man like a small elephant said to him affectionately, Dear Harry. Shaking his head to shake the horrific image away, Harry noticed that there was some indentation in the dear place on the letter paper, which seemed to be caused by a pen smearing the same place on the previous paper. They said we could write you a letter, so I wrote you this. After we left Privet Drive that day, we flew to Australia with them, and now we live in a house in the suburbs of Sydney. Then Dudley described in detail the location of their current residence and the surrounding environment in the letter, and even emphasized the color of the roof as described. I think he wants me to read these things letter by letter to the delivery owl when I answer the letter, Harry said to the cat on his lap after reading this passage, and the Seeker fell asleep snoring. Ignore him. Harry ignored the sleeping cat and continued to read the letter. Now my father has found a new job here, and it can be seen that he is very satisfied with the new job. My mother often visits neighbors, and sometimes invites neighbors to my house. I continue my studies in a nearby middle school. He also joined the school boxing club. Looking at the trivial matters of daily life written by Dudley, Harry didn't know what expression to use to face it. His life with the Dursleys for more than 10 years was destined to be unhappy, and now it seemed that he would be happier if he left their family. Then he thought of Aunt Petunia 29 years ago. At that time, he could see how envious and longing her aunt was for his mother and his magical talents. However, the aunt who longed to enter the magical world like her sister failed in the end. At that time, Harry had checked her aunt's body in the name of playing games, but unfortunately the result of the check was that she was a pure muggle, not a squib. Disappointment with the wizarding world, and disappointment with myself, eventually led to the distortion of my aunt's concept of the wizarding world. Harry sighed. Understanding is one thing, and forgiveness is another. Some scars can only be healed by a long time, and maybe one of them has already passed away before it is healed. When Harry finished reading the first page of Life Trivia, the second page made him jump up, and the sleeping cat in his lap was knocked to the ground. "Harry, let me tell you something. I didn't mention this to my parents. I think if I did, they would definitely drive me into the wild to be with the kangaroos of. I think I'm in love. She's a girl from our neighbor's house. I saw her for the first time when she and her mother came to our house at my mother's invitation that day, and I knew I was in love. That afternoon, while we were having tea in our room, we heard movement in the fence behind the house, so I went out to have a look. Then I found a kangaroo that jumped into the yard, so I went up and beat it away, but I also got punched on the forehead by it, and it bled a little. At this time, she came over and asked me to close my eyes, and then I felt the original hot wound become cold, and then my wound and the blood on my face disappeared. At this time, I opened my eyes and found that she was busy putting away the wooden stick in her hand. She is actually a person with the same incredible power as you. She was startled by my sudden opening of her eyes and was busy explaining to me. I told her it's okay. I have a cousin called Harry Potter. He can use magic just like you, and I was once enchanted to grow a tail for a day. As a result, she was even more frightened. Harry, I didn't expect you to be so famous that even your name floats in the sky of Australia. What followed was a whole page of compliments, which made Harry want to hit someone. On the third page, Dudley wrote, "Harry, I heard that you are very popular with girls in school, so I ask you to help me. For our grandma's sake, I will make up for everything I bullied you before. Here, please teach me how to make her fall in love with me. She has gone to school in America, and I want to write to him, but I don't know what to write." After reading Dudley's request in the letter, a sentence popped up in Harry's heart. If I knew this before, why bother? Just when Harry was worrying about how to reply to Dudley's letter, an exhausted owl flew into Zhang-Su's dormitory. The owl has a large package tied to its leg, and the sender is Rove's commander of the Alvermorny School of Witchcraft and Wizardry in the United States. Inside the package were 2 brand new letters and several letters that seemed to be many years old. Chapter 542 Hogwarts Security Division. Harry put the letter from Dudley back into the envelope and put it away. He planned to write to Reve's commander in the United States to inquire about the situation of the woman, and then consider how to reply to Dudley. He'd heard some fellow say once that he'd rather tear down 10 Hogwarts than ruin a marriage, and help Dudley if he could. The afternoon class time is coming soon, and Harry arrived at the door of the Transfiguration classroom 1 minute before class, but what he saw was the students gathered outside the classroom door chatting and discussing that the professors hadn't learned yet. Coming back to the topic, it seems that I just ran over in vain. Without disturbing the others, Harry turned and walked alone to a room on the first floor. I don't know how many years this room has been empty. In the past, even Peeves was not interested in entering it. It was not until the beginning of this school year that Professor McGonagall asked the house-elves to clean it up and use it as a new department. Office use. Are you worried about Sirius and Remus? Mad-Eye Moody asked, sitting behind his desk, looking down at something while his fake eyes kept pacing up and down the desk. Harry walking in circles. Perhaps it was the eye sockets that were uncomfortable because the fake eyes moved too fast, and Moody looked at Harry for a while and then stopped looking at him again. They've been away for so long, shouldn't something happen? Harry asked Moody after sitting on the stool in front of his desk, or perhaps turning himself into a dizzy state. Moody's eyes moved away from the parchment on the table, and then looked intently at Harry. Moody's scarred face and 2 eyeballs, one real and one fake, looked very intimidating. Even Harry, who was familiar with him, would feel uncomfortable if he stared at him for a long time. "What do you think you can do for them now?" Moody asked instead of answering Harry's question. "Maybe I should help them," Harry replied. "How do you want to help?" Moody asked. "You're going to St. Mungo's." Harry nodded. "So do you think you'll have a bigger role to play there than I do?" Moody continued. Harry still knew the difference between himself and Moody, and he shook his head. "So why do you think I stayed instead of going with him?" Moody said without waiting for Harry's answer, "Because I have more important things to do here, which is to protect Hogwarts. C's safety." Harry sighed, then nodded silently. He understands the truth, but he just can't control himself. He was at an age when his composure wasn't sufficient and his recklessness was excessive. It was a kind of torture for him to let him guard the rear when the front line was tense. And one of Professor McGonagall's secret missions to Moody is to watch Harry and not let him run around. After Harry and his group of 4 came back from time travel that day, a guy who had suffered domestic violence secretly found Professor McGonagall alone, and reported to her that something was wrong with Harry's thinking. Harry now has a wish and is ready to go calmly. The psychology of death. Professor McGonagall, who was taken aback, had to arrange for Moody to keep a close eye on Harry, for fear that he would sneak into Diagon Alley one day to face Voldemort one-on-one. Next we arranged students to do a good job of guarding Hogwarts, said Moody to Harry, who had to find something to distract Harry from St. Mungo's. And Moody now has such power to use Harry, because he is now hired by Professor McGonagall to be responsible for the security of Hogwarts. In Zhang's words, Moody is now the chief of the Hogwarts security section. And Moody, the head of the security department, besides needing to fight on the front line himself, also has the power to guide Hogwarts students to defend the school. Since Zhang was in the light and Dumbledore was in the dark, the two jointly promoted the establishment of the powerful organization Hogwarts Defender. After years of development, it has become a well-organized organization with strong action capabilities. Student organization. From eradicating the basilisk many years ago to eradicating the invading Death Eaters after the start of term dinner this year, the Defenders of Hogwarts has demonstrated combat effectiveness that cannot be ignored. The Auror Office even stipulates that students from this organization will be given priority in admission if they sign up for Auror. Up to now, under Dumbledore's deliberate management and Zhang's secret concessions, this organization has been deeply imprinted as belonging to Harry Potter. When Dumbledore passed away and Professor McGonagall became the principal, she found that although Old Dang's Harry Potter leader training program had achieved phased success, she did not think Harry was a perfect leader because of his lack of composure. The fire of hatred for Voldemort in him could well burn himself, or even the entire team. At first, Professor McGonagall wanted Zhang to lead the students. After all, as a legend on campus, his influence was comparable only to Harry. Even Ron, who once won the Goblet of Fire, lost him in this point, because there are rumors in the world that if Zhang had put his name into the Goblet of Fire instead of using the Goblet of Fire to barbecue, the Triwizard Tournament, the champion must belong to him. And Zhang has always been cautious enough, and not lacking in foresight, at least there is no need to worry about him leading the students to rush over. As a result, when Professor McGonagall communicated with Zhang on this issue in private, the other party declined without hesitation. She can't just pretend to be my meow and ask someone. Zhang to agree. I, Minerva McGonagall, want to save face too. Yes. So Professor McGonagall could only discuss with Babaji, let her stay in St. Mungo for more time, and then imitate Dumbledore to use the position of acting professor of Muggle studies to tie Zhang. So Zhang had to put quite part of the energy as devoted to the work of Hogwarts, and then it is used as an insurance to prevent Harry from going to waste. Another insurance that Professor McGonagall found for Harry was Hermione. Professor McGonagall knew that Harry had always regarded Hermione as a brother, and could listen to each other's opinions. Professor McGonagall awarded Hermione and Harry the highest positions among the two students, the president of the Male and Female Student Union, in order to let the relatively calm Hermione use the corresponding power to stop Harry when Harry was impulsive. The last piece of insurance arranged by Professor McGonagall is to set up a new security section to give the security section the power to guide students, and the section chief is Moody, who is experienced, powerful, and able to restrain Harry. As for Lupin and Black, Professor McGonagall could not count on them, especially Black. Professor McGonagall will be surprised if he doesn't accompany Harry to go wandering. Harry, who was sitting in the security department's office at the moment, didn't know about Professor McGonagall's arrangements, but worked with Moody to arrange the patrol work plan for the students who had no classes in the afternoon. Chapter 543, The Familiar Ceiling. Because of the emergency plan, Harry and Moody only took a short time to arrange today's patrol team. At this moment, a loud voice came from the entrance hall. Harry and Moody walked out of the office to see the professors rushing towards the infirmary carrying a stretcher. Medical division line doctor, 3. Familiar with the ceiling, the sky is already dark, and the light of candles shines on every corner of the room. Zhang, who was lying on the hospital bed, recognized the ceiling of the school doctor's room at a glance. He gently moved his fingers, toes, nose and ears to make sure that there were no mutilated limbs. Then he moved his hands and feet, and found that most of the muscles in his body had no strength, and he could only do a small amount of movement. Tried to make some sounds, but couldn't make any sound. Finally, I took a few deep breaths. Fortunately, the respiratory muscles were still working normally. At this time, Zhang was lying on the bed, feeling almost like a ghost pressing the bed. He closed his eyes and recalled what happened before he fell into coma. After escaping from Voldemort's pursuit, he returned to the battlefield in front of St. Mungo's gate. After taking a cold breath behind the crowd and knocking down a few Death Eaters, the Death Eaters began to choose a direction to break through. Unfortunately, the Death Eaters' breakout direction happened to be near Zhang Su. Zhang Su saw that the elite Aurors wearing the iron armor curse vest made in the shop of the Weasley twin brothers could not stop the Death Eaters who were fighting to the death. Under the charge, he was constantly hit by the curse until the armor curse failed and then fell down in just 1 minute. A group of Aurors and Death Eaters fell on the ground, and the following Death Eaters stepped on the wizard who didn't know whether they were dead or alive and rushed out. The gap in the defense line formed by the Aurors quickly widened after being pierced. At first, Zhang Su used a row of ground spikes to block the Death Eaters' footsteps, but they were quickly blown to pieces by the opponents. But he couldn't remember what happened next, he just vaguely remembered what he did, and then he was set on fire by the Death Eaters. Just as Zhang Su was trying to recall the scene before he fell into coma, a figure appeared beside the hospital bed. Madame Pomfrey took out her wand, made the top of the wand glow like a light bulb, and then stretched it out to Zhang Su's eyes to check the pupil reaction. Madame Pomfrey heaved a sigh of relief seeing Zhang Su blinking his eyes from the glare of the light. It's good to have a reaction. Just now I saw him staring at the ceiling with blank eyes and motionless like a person who is dying. It really shocked me. Can you hear me? Madame Pomfrey asked Zhang Su. Zhang Su blinked vigorously. Can you speak? If you can't, just blink. Madame Pomfrey continued to ask. Can the body move? Blink once if you can move, blink twice if you can't. Are you uncomfortable anywhere? If I point to your uncomfortable place, just blink a few times. 5 minutes later, Madame Pomfrey completed the physical examination relying on Zhang Su's blinking, and left the ward while sighing and shaking her head. Don't know. After a long time, Zhang Su, who was so bored that he fell asleep because he couldn't move, felt that someone was talking next to him, and then he realized that he was being helped up. Lying and half-sitting leaning against a hospital bed. After he opened his eyes, besides Madame Pomfrey who was holding a bottle of potion with a strange smell, Harry, Anthony, and Professor Flitwick stepped on the chair beside the hospital bed. The hospital beds are full. Madame Pomfrey, who was holding the potion, said to Harry and Anthony and the other boys, now let's feed him the medicine, and you do as I just said. He must be in pain now. Luna frowned and said, his tears are streaming out. Harry and Anthony are going to be unlucky. Ron said, especially Harry, he is deliberately taking revenge. The others around didn't know what Harry's revenge was that Ron was talking about, but those who had met Harry before and knew the cause and effect all nodded in unison. At this time, Zhang Su felt that if he was asked to play the scene of Pan Jinlian feeding Wu Dalin medicine in the future, he would definitely be able to perform Wu Dalin at an Oscar level, because his personal experience was worse than Wu Dalin's change. Zhang Su with blank eyes was leaning on the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling motionless. Luna took out a handkerchief to help him wipe off the liquid medicine at the corner of his mouth. Madame Pomfrey, how is he? Professor Flitwick asked. It's mainly a paralyzing spell, Madame Pomfrey said. Most of the muscles in his body have been paralyzed. It will take a few days to fully recover. Are there any other symptoms? Professor Flitwick continued to ask. Madame Pomfrey shook her head and said, I don't know yet. We can't do further inspections based on his feedback until he can speak tomorrow. Being hit by multiple spells, it's impossible to communicate by blinking alone. A careful examination was done. Thankfully, there were no external injuries on his body. Zhang Su, who was on the hospital bed, felt terrified after hearing Madame Pomfrey's words. In that chaotic scene, if he was unlucky, it would not be surprising if he fell to the ground and was trampled to death. The onlookers in the ward were quickly invited out of the ward by Madame Pomfrey. As soon as they left, Professor Flitwick, who had closed the ward, said to Madame Pomfrey, it's been hard for you these days, Madame Pomfrey. If anyone suspicious approaches the ward recently, please report it immediately. I will. Madame Pomfrey nodded and agreed. What's going on? He was hunted down by the mysterious man himself today, said Professor Flitwick, so we dare not leave him in St. Mungo's for treatment. Harry and his students were taken aback when they heard this. What's going on? Harry asked anxiously. No one knows. Professor Flitwick shook his head and said, we only saw the two of them chasing and fleeing one by one. Later, he should have escaped from the mysterious man, and then changed his appearance and returned to St. Mungo's Hospital. We almost didn't recognize him if his wand wasn't so distinctive. Professor Flitwick would naturally not say that he almost fell after accidentally stepping on a certain rolling pin after the war, and only then did he find out about Xiao Zhangzi's return. At this time, Professor Flitwick took out his pocket watch to check the time, and then said to Harry, "The time is almost up, Harry. We should get ready." Chapter 544 Hogwarts Radio Station. In the burrow, the Weasley family had just finished their dinner, and Mrs. Weasley, who had packed the tableware, put a pot of steaming tea on the dining table. "Percy, you should find a girlfriend. You are the only one left in the family without a girlfriend. You can't let Fred and George get married in front of you." Mrs. Weasley babbled on to Percy as she took a plate of pastries from the adjacent kitchen. "If you see a suitable girl, take it home. The German girl named Monica Weiss that I saw drinking with you in Hogsmeade last time is not bad. You are colleagues who often hang out together. Take care of her more at ordinary times. Girls will be easily moved by you. I usually invite her to eat more. I often go to Mrs. Pudife's tea house to find some excuses to buy some gifts for her. I'm afraid that your salary is not enough. When you go back, remember to ask me to get a bag of galleons. Go back. You don't have to worry about the new house when you get married. The family has saved a sum of money in the past few years, which is enough for each of your 6 brothers to buy a new house." "Where's Ginny?" Fred interrupted suddenly. "Don't you have a share of her?" "Don't worry about her. Harry has more money in the Gringotts vault than you do," Mrs. Weasley replied. Before school started, Mrs. Weasley went to Harry's vault to withdraw money to help him buy this year's textbooks. At that time, she was frightened by a large pile of gold coins in Harry's vault. After the burrow was attacked last time, Mrs. Weasley and the others briefly moved to number 12 Grimwald Place. After the situation became less tense, they moved back. After all, this is their home. Today, Percy didn't have to hedge his bets unless he jumped ship to the Death Eaters, so he was often called back for dinner by Mr. Weasley or the twin brothers. On several occasions, Mrs. Weasley even sent freshly made snacks to Zhangjialao, where Percy and the others were based. It's just that although Percy is only 21 years old, he has become an outlier among the children of the Weasley family when he is single. As a result, he enjoys his parents' nagging of older unmarried people 10 years in advance. Percy, who had already known that it was useless to refute, looked at the watch on his left hand, and then said to Mrs. Weasley, "The time is almost up, Mom." "Oh, it's almost 8 o'clock," Cyrillic lettered, and Mrs. Weasley immediately turned on the old chest-like radio in the dining room. The music of Adelina by the water came from the radio. At 8 o'clock in the evening GMT, the music ended, and a voice familiar to everyone in the restaurant came from the radio. "Good evening, listeners. This is Hogwarts Radio. I am Harry Potter, today's rotating host. Welcome to today's Hogwarts program from 10:32, every night. I almost forgot." Mrs. Weasley breathed a sigh of relief, and poured tea and snacks for each of Mr. Weasley, Percy and the twin brothers. Harry's voice continued to be heard on the radio. "According to the divination of people who do not want to be named, there will be no clouds in Scotland tomorrow, and there will be heavy rain in England and Wales. Tomorrow you can take out all the quilts at home and bask in the sun," said Mrs. Weasley. "The sun is more effective than a spell against wet weather. Period. The burrow, by the way, is located in Devon in southwest England. The next thing to start is Hogwarts Press Hour. This morning, there was a large-scale battle against the Death Eaters in front of the St. Mungo's Hospital for magical injuries and injuries. The brave and fearless Aurors killed the Death Eaters. It is said that today's incident was caused by Professor Flitwick." Percy, who knew the inside story afterwards, said. "Shut up, X2." The twins also stopped Percy, who was interrupting them. Professor Flitwick, who was visiting the parents of injured students at St. Mungo's Hospital for magical injuries and wounds this morning, encountered the shameful, dirty, greasy man who killed former Hogwarts headmaster Albus Dumbledore in the hospital lobby. The traitor Severus Snape, and then the two dueled in front of St. Mungo's Hospital. At this time in Great Britain, almost all wizarding families and ordinary families whose children are wizards are listening to the voice of Harry Potter on the radio. Since the beginning of school in September this year, Hogwarts Radio has been established. Due to the strong electromagnetic interference in the Hogwarts castle, the radio room in the castle needs to transmit the sound to the radio room on the top of the nearby mountain through the magic microphone, and then let the radio station convert the sound from the microphone into electromagnetic waves and send it to thousands of families. 10,000 households. The broadcast content of the radio station is mainly based on the current school life. During the period, it will quietly add anti-Death Eaters and praise the achievements of the Ministry of Magic, so as to increase the influence of Hogwarts and improve the quality of life. The confidence that the wizards fell. Every night from 10:32, Harry and several other students and professors took turns participating in the broadcast as the host. In addition to the news columns, the audience letters and academic exchanges are also broadcast regularly or irregularly during the short broadcast time every day. The manuscripts for each column of the radio station are completed by the students themselves. Although the words and sentences of many manuscripts are immature, they are unpretentious and unpretentious, unlike other radio stations that often play tricks. In particular, there were a few times when Peeves raided the radio room and messed up the show, but the sound of Harry and Peeves stealing manuscripts and Peeves singing self-made songs also reminded me of the time when Peeves was killed by Peeves at Hogwarts. In the deepest memory of the students who Peeves played tricks on, some people even wrote to suggest that Peeves be the host. Just when Harry was about to finish reading the content of the duel between Flitwick and Snape on the manuscript paper, the door of the broadcasting room was opened without a sound, and Professor McGonagall walked to Harry's side without a sound, and took Harry's hand. The second piece of paper in the press release was pulled out, and it was written about Zhang Su's injury in today's battle. Professor McGonagall put a written note in front of Harry, which said that Zhang Su's injury must not be spread outside. Although Harry didn't know why Professor McGonagall made such an arrangement, he could only keep his doubts in his heart at this time, and then began to read the original third manuscript. In the burrow, the Wheel-Eyes listened to the news and occasionally exchanged whispers about some issues. After the news program is over, there is a short period of music time. At this time, the hosts in the broadcasting room need to change shifts or change scripts. At this moment, there was a sound of chicken crowing from the chicken coop outside the burrow. "I'll go out and see, maybe it's another mouse or goblin stealing the chicken feed," Mrs. Weasley said to the others in the restaurant. Chapter 545 Chicken. I am not depressed. I am not sick. Zhang Su, who was lying immobile on the hospital bed, squinted at Harry's trio and Madame Pomfrey, who were watching him, and Madame Pomfrey beside the hospital bed, feeling as if he was preparing for the funeral. Combining science and magic, the function of the paralyzing spell is to block the transmission signals of the nerves in the victim, so that the communication between the muscles and the brain is disconnected. Fortunately, this time Zhang was recruited by striated muscle, smooth muscle and cardiac muscle are fine, otherwise he would be completely cold by now. Another good thing is that his sphincter is fine, otherwise the scene would be embarrassing. Generally speaking, to cure this kind of curse, you need to re-establish the smooth flow of the nerves of the muscles. So after Zhang Su drank the medicine yesterday, he felt like ants climbing the tree, as if there were countless ants crawling in the muscles of his whole body, and he was powerless to resist. However, the next morning, when Madame Pomfrey came for a routine checkup, she discovered that Zhang's striated muscles from the neck down could only send signals to the brain, but could not receive signals from the brain. That is to say, he can barely speak now, and the muscles on his body have a sense of touch, but he can't control the muscle activity, and even the knee-jerk reflex is gone. At present, Zhang Su has just changed from an immobile salted fish to a talking salted fish. Moreover, Zhang Xianyu insisted that Harry, who took the initiative to help Madame Pomfrey perform a knee-jerk reflex examination on her, broke his leg with a hammer, so Harry should pay 180,000 gold coins. Madame Pomfrey didn't care that Harry was taking the opportunity to take revenge on Zhang Xianyu, and asked him to help check the muscle sensation on Zhang Su's body. Naturally, checking the feeling of the muscles is not as easy as checking the tactile sensation of the skin. Madame Pomfrey handed Harry a thin and long needle. Seeing Harry, who took the steel needle, begin to transform into Sister Bow, Zhang Xianyu warned weakly and nervously, "Harry, you have to think about the consequences before doing something. This is for your speedy recovery." Harry said to Zhang Xianyu with a playful smile, "Madame Pomfrey can treat you better only after careful examination." At this moment, Ron took out a plate containing a delicious honey-roasted chicken leg, shook it in front of Zhang Xianyu, and said, "Last night, a chicken in my family was scared to death by a mouse that stole the feed. Depression, and then my mother made it into a roast chicken and sent it over overnight. I thought you recovered a chicken leg today and left it for you, but it seems that I can only eat it for you. You two wait for me." Zhang Xianyu finished speaking and looked at Hermione, who hadn't spoken yet. Hermione sighed and shook her head, and took 2 steps to the side to draw a clear line between these 2 little killers. "The relationship between you young people is really good," Madame Pomfrey said with a smile. "The 2 of them are afraid that you will be in a bad mood after suffering such a serious injury, so they are thinking of ways to cheer you up. When I recover, I will thank them well," Zhang Xianyu said through gritted teeth. Dividing line in a manner on the outskirts of London, the Death Eaters in the meeting room looked at the Dark Lord, who had been motionless for a whole morning while standing by the window, not daring to speak, for fear of interrupting Voldemort's train of thought and summoning terrible punishment. There was a loud bang, and a bolt of lightning struck a big tree far away from the window, and half of the trunk of the big tree and the branches above were knocked to the ground together. Voldemort turned around, returned to his seat in front of the long table and sat down. After looking around at the Death Eaters on both sides of the table, he said, "What do you think of this heavy rain?" The Death Eaters present, especially Lucius Malfoy, were stunned. They all thought that the Dark Lord would ask questions about yesterday's battle, but no one expected that the Dark Lord would ask them about the weather. Lao Ma prepared a report last night according to the Dark Lord's preferences, and now it seems that last night's hard work was in vain. The Death Eaters looked at each other. None of them paid any attention to the heavy rain that started this morning. "Lucius, tell me how accurate the weather forecast on the Hogwarts radio station is." Voldemort saw that no one answered his question, so he began to call names. The old horse smiled. "The weather forecast on the Hogwarts radio station has never been accurate. This is a big joke in the British wizarding world recently." Thinking of this, the smile on Lao Ma's face suddenly froze, and he immediately changed into a serious expression, and said, "Only today's forecast is correct." Voldemort nodded to the old horse, and then said to the Death Eaters in a cold voice, "Which of you can guarantee that your prediction of the weather for such a long time is completely wrong, not once correct? Why does Hogwarts Radio keep broadcasting wrong weather forecasts? Why they can maintain an error rate of almost all mistakes, and did not broadcast the correct weather forecast until today? What is the meaning behind the correct weather forecast? Have you considered it?" Looking at his subordinates, who turned from looking at each other to being at a loss, Voldemort felt that sometimes they were not easy to use. Voldemort looked at a Death Eater who was dressed like a mummy, and said to him, "Severus, you ask the people who are arranged in Hogwarts to report all the major events that happened there recently, especially what happened yesterday matter." After Snape took the order, Voldemort ordered the other Death Eaters, "Keep an eye on other places, and if anything different from the past happens, report it immediately. I suspect that this is what Hogwarts is giving people signal." Dividing line the burrow, Mrs. Weasley, drenched in heavy rain, just walked into the hall and sneezed. The weather in the UK is already very cold now, and it will start snowing soon. Being drenched in heavy rain at this time, it is easy to catch a cold and have a fever. "Are you alright? I didn't expect Hogwarts weather forecast to be accurate." The rainstorm came as soon as it was said. "I don't know how many people got wet today." A middle-aged woman walked out of the living room. Coming out, she took out her wand and cast a spell on Mrs. Weasley, and Mrs. Weasley, who was originally wet, suddenly became dry. "Thank you." Mrs. Weasley used her wand to manipulate a pile of quilts that were just as wet as she had just flown in, and then landed on the table in the dining room. Flying in behind the quilt was an equally wet chicken. Mrs. Weasley said to Mrs. Diggory, who came to visit, "This chicken is raining today, and it may get sick. It's better to roast it." Chapter 546 Don in number 039, Look at the fun today. Today, the ward of the school infirmary is filled with the smell of ozone. This is not Madame Pomfrey using ozone to disinfect the ward, but Harry showing off the lightning that he just learned in front of Zhang Xianyu for more than half an hour. Lying on the hospital bed, Zhang Xianyu said to Harry, "Harry, you have to save time when doing things these days." "What?" Harry said nonchalantly. "Haven't you heard?" Zhang Xianyu said with a sneer, "Don't look at the fun today, you're afraid of making a list in the future." "I've never heard of it," Harry said, shaking his head. Then, Harry stopped the spell performance, pointed at Zhang Xianyu with his wand and said, "Madame Pomfrey said that stimulating your muscles with an appropriate electric current will help your body recover." "What is the proper current?" Zhang Xianyu asked with a dark face. "I don't know," Harry replied with a smile and shook his head. "I'll figure it out after a few more tries." After an unknown amount of time, Zhang Xianyu's muscles slowly recovered from the trembling caused by the electric shock. He asked Harry to help raise the bedboard of the hospital bed, and sat on the bed by himself. Harry, you should know that African magic has special characteristics when casting spells. Zhang Xianyu asked Harry, who was standing beside the hospital bed contentedly. Because the wand was invented in Europe, wizards in Africa didn't start using it until the last century, so many wizards in Africa cast spells with their fingers or gestures. Harry repeated according to the contents of the textbook machine. You recited it right. Zhang Xianyu said while moving his right hand that began to regain control. Using fingers and gestures to cast spells has its own advantages and disadvantages compared to casting spells without a stick, but generally speaking, as long as the fingers are not cramped, it's still more convenient than casting a spell without a wand. Harry didn't know why Zhang Xianyu mentioned this at this time, and he asked curiously, if you learn this African method of casting spells, then after being hit by the disarming spell, you can give the enemy a surprise. So, do you know how to cast spells like this? That's right. You don't overwhelm yourself with too many skills. Sometimes some skills that you don't usually use can reverse the situation at a critical moment and save your life. Zhang Su continued to move his limp right hand and said, in fact, I have been studying hand gesture spells in private for many years. If anyone thinks that I can't cast spells because I can move only one hand, then he's very wrong. Harry was no stranger to Zhang Su's strange new skills bursting out from time to time. He was a little surprised, then suddenly remembered something, turned around and ran away. Zhang Su had accumulated power in Harry's heart for a long time. Seeing that Zhang Su was about to lose his temper, Harry's first choice was to turn in immediately. For a moment, he forgot that the other party had been lying on the hospital bed for 2 or 3 days. Harry didn't run away in the end, and after being hit by the curse, he felt a sudden chill in his head. He touched the top of his head and found that the touch on his hands was strange, and then his face changed drastically after thinking of something. Just as he turned around to trouble Zhang Su, the door of the ward was pushed open, and Ron and Hermione walked in. When the two of them saw the figure walking towards Zhang Su's hospital bed, they immediately drew out their wands and cast a spell on him. It was Snape. Snape sneaked and passed out. Now Hogwarts has 2 names that cannot be mentioned, one is Voldemort and the other is Snape. Ron's shout shocked the whole of Hogwarts. In a very short time, the ward of the school infirmary was surrounded by professors, and then everyone saw Hermione's stun spell and Ron made up the knife Harry Potter with a head of greasy black hair lying on the ground behind. Just now Hermione was surprised the stun spell cast next hit dealt critical damage, and the commonly used spell-breaking effects were not very effective, so Madame Pomfrey suggested that Harry just lie down and forget it. Looking at Harry lying motionless on the hospital bed, and the black hair on his head that was 95% similar to Snape, Professor McGonagall found the culprit based on years of experience. Mr. Zhang, what's going on? Professor McGonagall asked. Just now I was discussing body transformation with Harry, and he planned to turn into Snape without using Polyjuice Potion. Zhang Su thought of an excuse in a few seconds. As a result, he just completed the transformation of Harry. Luo and Hermione came in. It doesn't take much language to fool the professors at Hogwarts. As long as they are pointed out in a direction that seems reasonable, the professors will often think in that direction first. As soon as Zhang Su said that Harry was going to look like Snape, Ron and Hermione immediately thought of the time when they sneaked into the Slytherin common room after being transformed by Polyjuice Potion. Professor McGonagall and the others also thought that with Harry's sometimes reckless character, he might have a plan to turn into Snape and sneak into the Death Eaters. The professors had a whole new understanding of Harry's boldness after seeing Harry take a few people for a walk in the past with a time turner. Seeing the way Professor McGonagall and the others looked at Harry changed, Zhang's little plan was also completed. After Harry woke up, he would wait for Professor McGonagall, Lupin and Black to blame them. By the time the professors left, Harry's symptoms had improved and he had started snoring. Hermione came to Zhang Su's hospital bed, frowned and asked, "Does Harry have any new plans recently?" Zhang Su pretended to be talking about him, and replied, "No, he is so busy recently, how could he have any new plans? Then why did he look like Snape?" Hermione continued. "Ho ha ho ha, I don't understand what you said." Zhang Su replied in a very blunt tone. At this time, the smell of roasted chicken with black pepper wafted again in the ward. Ron took a plate containing 2 chicken wings and placed it in front of Zhang Su. "A chicken in my house got internal injuries in a fight yesterday, so if you tell me what you and Harry are planning, I'll leave you with these 2 grilled chicken wings." At this moment, Harry woke up with a beep, and Ron hurriedly put the plate on the bedside table next to the hospital bed, and then walked towards Harry. Ron and Hermione helped Harry up to sit up, and Hermione said to Harry apologetically, "Sorry, Harry, we mistook you for Snape just now." Harry, who was still a little dizzy, waved his hands. He didn't want to mention this now, but he suddenly asked, "What's this smell?" "This is the taste of the roasted chicken with black pepper that my mother just sent. Zhang couldn't eat it again today, so the rest is all yours," Ron said with a smile on his face. Harry shook his drowsy head, and his greasy black hair flew up, causing Ron and Hermione to take half a step back. Ron ran as soon as Harry's words fell. Before Ron could react, a curse flew from behind and hid him. Hermione, who saw what the deadly duo had done in the past 2 days, immediately figured out the cause and effect, and immediately jumped aside to keep a distance from these two guys. Ron, who had been cursed by Zhang Zuai, found that there was no visible change in his body. His hair did not become like Snape's, and his nostrils, mouth, and ears all changed into strange shapes. Soon, Harry and Hermione could smell the black pepper roast chicken coming from Ron. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelists. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 547, Voldemort and Number 039's Gift. Somewhere on the seashore in eastern England, raging waves beat on the cliffs on the shore, and the low dark clouds seemed to be about to press down on the sea. A dark and dilapidated lighthouse stood on the edge of the cliff. Many tourists who drive along the seaside road and see this postmodern Gothic-style lighthouse in the distance decide to explore and visit the lighthouse, but when they approached the lighthouse, they unknowingly forgot all the information about the lighthouse not far away, and left here with one kick of the gas pedal. A figure wearing a black traveling cloak appeared on the side of the road. With a snap out of thin air, he raised his head and looked at the dark clouds in the sky, muttered something about the weather, and then walked forward along the path leading to the lighthouse. Unlike those who couldn't get to the lighthouse, today's visitors are walking forward step by step on the wet and muddy path. If someone is watching carefully, they will find that the shoes on the visitors' feet are covered with mud. It didn't pick up a little stain when walking on the road. When the visitor walked a long way from the lighthouse, the scenery in front of him suddenly changed, and a huge manor built on the edge of a cliff appeared in front of him. Looking beyond a wall of holly trees, the visitor sees the roof of a resplendent building. At this moment, the gate of the manor opened, and an old wizard stood behind the gate to greet the visitor. He was wearing a well-tailored robe, his white hair was combed meticulously, and his deep-set green eyes were full of excitement and a trace of anxiety. "Welcome, Your Excellency Minister." The owner of the manor greeted the visitor. "Thank you very much for your invitation, Mr. Smith." Lucius Malfoy responded to the owner of the manor. Malfoy was a little surprised that the owner of the manor came out to greet him in person. Generally, the butlers came forward to greet him. It was rare for the owner to greet him at the gate, unless the visitor was the Dark Lord himself. Regarding the warm hospitality of the owner of the manor, Malfoy had a little guess in his heart. After a brief greeting, Smith led Malfoy towards the main building in the middle of the manor. In front of the main building in the manor is a huge garden, which is full of various ornamental herbs. From Malfoy's experience, he could see that in this well-designed garden, as the seasons alternated throughout the year, different herbs took turns to bloom, bear fruit and change color of leaves, presenting different landscapes. When the two walked halfway, Smith asked Malfoy, "Mr. Malfoy, how do you think my garden compares with the garden of your Malfoy Manor?" Sure enough, Malfoy sighed inwardly. After his Magias Harong, which was once known as the No Manor in Great Britain, was burned down, the Shijiazhuang, which was originally ranked second, stepped on the devastated Magias Harong to climb to the first position. How could Smith, who has been the second child for so many years, let go of this opportunity to feel proud? It's just that the Malfoy family, whose family has fallen, will not be able to restore the former glory of Magias Harong in the near future. It is not bad for their family not to grow vegetables in the garden to reduce expenses. Along the way, Smith kept showing off to his old enemy, who had suppressed him for many years on the grounds of asking Malfoy for advice on the layout of the manor. And Lao Ma is not the kind of young man who only knows how to fight for a moment, so he just followed the other party's words and started to praise Shijiazhuang. The two didn't stop bragging about their business until they came to the living room of the main building of Shijiazhuang. "Welcome to our Honorable Minister of Magic." The guests who had been waiting for a long time in the living room stood up to welcome Malfoy's arrival. Malfoy, who had already taken off his cloak in the hall, was meticulously dressed today. In this kind of gathering where the patriarchs of various families formally meet, a person's attire represents his attitude towards the party and the people present. If Voldemort had sent Snape to such a party, he would have held his head in the sink for half an hour before speaking. Malfoy looked around at the people in the meeting room, and found that the Welcome family, the largest potion manufacturer in Britain, and the patriarchs of the herbal planting and sales families represented by the Smith family were all present. 90% of the families engaged in the handicraft industry, including the patriarch of the Bentley family, the largest shareholder of the manufacturers, came, and the rest were princes in their respective fields such as crucibles, clothing, and catering. It can be said that these people in the living room now control the vast majority of the production share of domestic products in the British Magical Society other than wands. The Malfoy family used to operate the wholesale sales of food in the wizarding world. After exchanging pleasantries, everyone took their seats. Malfoy first took out a stack of books with black covers, and he took out his wand and tapped on these books, and each book automatically flew to everyone. First of all, on behalf of my master, the Great Dark Lord, I present a gift to you all, Malfoy said to everyone. Smith was the first to take the book floating in front of him, startled when he saw the author's name clearly on the cover. Smith asked cautiously, "Your Excellency Malfoy, is this book really written by Salazar Slytherin?" "That's right." Malfoy nodded lightly and said, "As the descendant of Slytherin, His Excellency the Dark Lord, he naturally owns Slytherin's works. In order to show his sincerity in cooperating with you, my master specially selected some of them. The Slytherin work is presented to you as a gift. For a magic family, the most precious thing is always all kinds of magic knowledge. Although the magical knowledge recorded in Slytherin's works is thousands of years ago, this knowledge is the foundation of all kinds of magical knowledge developed on top of it in the following millennia. If you master this knowledge, you will continue to introduce new ones just like Grey, who has mastered the core technology. And this kind of core technology is often an untold secret within each family, and it is the foundation of a family's foothold in the magical world. Stones from other hills can learn after the various families here have obtained the knowledge of Slytherin. They can strengthen the foundation of their respective families. Now that Voldemort sent out such a big gift all at once, the bosses of the various families who knew the truth that a gift is given to others must be asked for had to treat today's gathering more cautiously. At that time, Mr. Zhang opened up the situation in one fell swoop by relying on the exchange of knowledge between the East and the West, so that almost all the not recalcitrant families accepted his affection and opened their eyes to some of his actions. Now, in order to completely pull these families into his chariot, Voldemort also took out his old book to buy people's hearts. After all, Slytherin's knowledge is in the same system as theirs, and has a far greater effect on them than knowledge from another system. It's just that if everyone here knows that all the Slytherin books in Voldemort's hands come from the Zhang family building, I don't know if they will attribute this favor to someone. Zhang, by the way. Bentley put away the book in his hand after flipping through a few pages, and then asked Malfoy, "Please, Mr. Malfoy, please convey the thanks and respect from the Bentley family to Mr. Dark Lord for me." "What do we have?" "Things can be of service to His Excellency the Dark Lord." Chapter 548 The Old Horse in number 039. Ambition, part, when activists of a certain class or strata in the society are organized in a planned way to achieve a certain goal, and when the society recognizes that this organization has the legal power to organize and expand its claims, it also actively integrates into political life to achieve when it plays its role in maintaining the political power, or in influencing the exercise of political power, the organization becomes a political party. Although Voldemort's original intention of forming Death Eaters was to recruit a group of subordinates for himself, rather than forming a political party to participate in politics, and the magical society has no tradition of engaging in party politics, but as Voldemort's subordinates gathered more and more wizards who agreed with the ideas he preached, and finally captured the Ministry of Magic and began to rule part of the magical world, the Death Eaters naturally embarked on the road of partyization. The first to discover this trend was Lucius Malfoy, thanks to Sugarcane. He is a rare wizard who opens his eyes to see the world among the Death Eaters, and even the British wizarding world. He vaguely felt that this might be the key to the success or failure of the Malfoy family in the future. When he reported this discovery at the Death Eaters' regular meeting and made a report on strengthening the organization of Death Eaters, the rest of the Death Eaters, except Snape, took his report as a joke. Snape wore a dead face all day long, and the other Death Eaters didn't know whether he was crying or laughing in his heart. Because in the eyes of the court Death Eaters, those new Death Eaters are all cannon fodder who can be sacrificed at will to achieve their own goals, and uniting them is the same thing as uniting house-elves. They themselves were all rebellious people, and if Voldemort hadn't been on their heads, they would have fought first. And Muggle things like political parties are not as effective as a magic wand in their hands. For a while Malfoy became the target of ridicule by the Death Eaters. Voldemort, who didn't understand what Malfoy meant the whole time, stopped others from making fun of Malfoy, but in order not to dampen the enthusiasm of his right-hand man, Voldemort let him figure it out before starting the next meeting topic. Any mature political party represents the interests of a group, and this interest group and political party will form a community of economic and power interests. After some deliberation, Lao Ma took the opportunity of helping Voldemort win allies, and began to contact the family with the most capital in the British Magical Society. When Bentley asked Malfoy what the Dark Lord wanted them to do, Malfoy did not answer the question directly, but asked everyone present, "Everyone, do you want to expand your market by 100 times?" If it was an ordinary wizard who said this, everyone present would take this sentence as a polite remark, but now it was Lucius Malfoy who said this, and behind him stood the Dark Lord Voldemort, which had to be carefully considered. The first thing they think of is the European continent across the strait. The area of Europe is about 40 times that of the United Kingdom, and the wizard is more than 10 times that of the United Kingdom. The benefits are enough to make them drop everything and follow Voldemort. And there is a continent called Africa in the south of Europe. If Voldemort can take this place, it is not impossible for them to write and persuade the Emperor to support Voldemort as a great treasure. For a while, the name Empire on which the sun never sets appeared in everyone's minds. As soon as there is an appropriate profit, capital becomes bold-faced. With such huge profits, they can sell the rope to hang themselves, and it also comes with free shipping, let alone tied to Voldemort's chariot. As for the Hogsmeade regime in the north, it doesn't matter at all in their eyes. As a pure-blood family that discriminates against Muggles, everyone here is very disgusted with the fact that the Hogsmeade regime and the Muggle government have joined forces. Some families even voted for the Voldemort regime in London from the very beginning, making the Hogsmeade regime I feel very sad. So in the beginning, the Hogsmeade regime had to compromise with these families who possessed a lot of capital to ensure that they would not use Muggle weapons on a large scale to deal with wizards. This is why someone Zhang said before the start of school that if he came to a cannon company, he could leave work early today. Malfoy sat on the sofa, took a sip of a cup of black tea, and quietly watched the gang of capital tycoons bow their heads in thought or discuss their own words in whispers. The pie was drawn first. As for what the filling is, it depends on their own understanding. If their understanding is wrong, it is their problem. Anyway, the final interpretation is in their own hands. The patriarch of the Welcome family, Britain's largest potion manufacturer, was the first to stand up. He came to Malfoy and bowed, and then said, "Please tell your excellency the Dark Lord that the Welcome family will stop today. Sell out potions to Hogsmeade, and stop selling all potions to anyone who does business anywhere but Diagon Alley." Welcome's decision tickled exactly where Voldemort's regime itched. Since the merchants in Diagon Alley collectively moved northward, Diagon Alley was empty except for Gringotts, and the taxes collected there were not enough to pay for the lighting fees of the pseudo-ministry of magic. If these manufacturers can only supply to the shops in Diagon Alley like the Welcome family, then most of the merchants who sell can only return to Diagon Alley to open their doors. In this way, the economy of Diagon Alley can at least be restored to a higher level, and the tax revenue of the pseudo-magic ministry can be greatly increased. Malfoy expressed his sincere gratitude to the Welcome family for their generous gesture of kindness. Subsequently, the Smith family, a large herbal grower, and others also made the same commitment as the Welcome family. But neither of these groups mentioned anything about St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Wounds and Wounds, nor did Malfoy make any hints in this regard. After all, St. Mungo's prestige and importance among British wizards are too high, and maintaining the status quo is the best choice. With the families of these two important industries taking the lead, the rest of the families operating from the Crucible to the Parchment responded to the call of the Ministry of Magic, drew a line with the Hogsmeade authorities, and returned to the big family of capital in Diagon Alley. Then Malfoy said to Bentley, who represents the broomstick industry, "Next, we can temporarily import flying carpets from India to compete with the Weasley family in the market. When the Weasley family goes bankrupt, the flying carpet will continue. It is a prohibited commodity." Draco Malfoy, as the representative of the old horse, has already reached an agreement with Bentley on this matter, and now he is only here to make this cooperation plan public because the ban on the import of flying carpets from India has been hyped up as a politically correct thing in the British Magical Society. If there is no peace with the Allies, this immature alliance will collapse from within. So Bentley just nodded and didn't say much. After everyone expressed their views, Evans, who produced a crucible, asked, "So, can your excellency solve the food problem for us?" As soon as Evans' question came out, Malfoy, who used to sell food, became the focus of everyone's attention. The Hogsmeade regime's one major weapon to win over the pure-blood families is the sale of food. In the past, after the Ministry of Magic bought food from the British government, the Malfoy family sold it to pure-blood families who were completely isolated from ordinary people. Now that the Malfoy family has turned to the enemy, the Hogsmeade regime, recognized by the British government, has reselected agents to sell food to wizards who support their side. This is why these pure-blood families flirted with the Hogsmeade regime in the beginning. Now that they have decided to fully support the Voldemort regime, it is impossible to buy the food sold by the Hogsmeade regime, so the problem of food became an important problem they will face next. After all, wizards can use magic, but they can't live without food. "You don't have to worry," Malfoy said confidently. "Tomorrow the Malfoy family will have a large amount of food for sale, so you can buy twice as much food as before, no problem." After receiving Malfoy's assurance and seeing him full of confidence, the uneasiness in the hearts of everyone present eased a little. In order to dispel their worries, Malfoy continued, "Before that, I contacted the Cargill family in the United States, and they agreed to sell us enough grain. Now the people who were worried about being hungry finally breathed a sigh of relief. They also have some understanding of the American Magical Society. The Cacker brothers, whose ancestral home is in Scotland, began to engage in food business in the United States more than 100 years ago, and are now the largest food producer in the American Magical Society. Although the Malfoy family, the second-hand dealers, used to be a local tyrant in the UK, they were weak chickens in front of the Cargill family. After solving the food problem, the main task of today's gathering in Smith Manor was successfully completed. Malfoy began to contact and win over various capital forces on behalf of Voldemort, and solved their food problems. And these capitalist families began to make limited investments in Voldemort. Their first investment is to restore the economic activities of Diagon Alley. If Voldemort can eliminate the Hogsmeade regime and unify the Magical Society in a short period of time, then they will definitely increase their investment in Voldemort. After all, even Voldemort would not believe that they would support him unreservedly from the beginning, and everyone's good start is half the battle. For Malfoy privately, sacrificing a little of the interests of the Malfoy family to gain the opportunity to do business with the Cargill family of the United States, and then to help various capital tycoons solve their problems, this is a deal that can never be lost. Chapter 549, The Old Horse in Number 039, S Ambition, Part, Comma. Lucius Malfoy had only returned home when the willows were in full bloom in the moon. At this time Draco Malfoy and his mother had finished their dinner and just came out of the dining room. After greeting his wife, Ma said to his son, "Draco, change your clothes and come with me." After the old horse finished speaking, he walked directly to his room. Draco looked at his mother, and followed him back to his room after seeing his mother nodding slightly. With a sound of snap, the old horse and the pony appeared on a vast grassland. In front of them was a fence wall and an iron gate that could not be seen in the dark night, illuminated by a dim light bulb. Light up the place near the iron gate. The old horse took out a key and opened the lock on the iron door like a muggle, and then walked in with Draco. Draco looked around curiously, but in the dark night, he could only distinguish from the buildings with lights in the distance, a longhouse, and the smell of cow dung in the breeze, that this was a cow farm field. Just when Draco was about to take out his wand to illuminate, his hand was held down by his father as soon as he touched the wand. "Don't use magic here, and don't talk nonsense later," the old horse whispered to his son. Just as the father and son approached a brightly lit building, there was a barking of dogs from the building, and then two black backs rushed out from the shadow beside the house, and were finally pulled by the dog leash. The barking of the dog caught the attention of the people in the house, and a middle-aged man with a slight limp appeared in front of the door, holding a double-barreled shotgun. "Is it you, Mr. Steele?" the middle-aged man in front of the room shouted to Malfoy and his son. "Hey, Spike, it's me," the old horse responded loudly. When Malfoy and his son came to the door of the house, The man called Spike by the old horse put the shotgun in his hand aside, and went forward to hug the old horse. "Old man, why didn't you tell me in advance when you came back? Have you eaten yet?" After letting go of the old horse, Spike said, "I heard Tom and Jerry barking differently than usual, so I thought you should be back." "So you came to meet me with a shotgun?" the old horse said to Spike with a smile. Spike smiled awkwardly after being exposed, and turned the topic to Draco, who was beside him with a confused face. "This is Clark, right?" Spike held out his right hand to Draco. After Draco shook hands with the other party ignorantly, the old horse said to Spike, "I brought Clark here for a look these 2 days. This is his first time here, so I'll take him back first." After bidding farewell to Spike, Draco was taken by the old horse to another automatic building tens of meters away before he recovered. After the old horse skillfully opened the door and turned on the lights, Draco found that the building was a traditional arrangement of a legendary Muggle family, and there were a lot of household appliances such as telephones, lights, air conditioners, TVs, and speakers. When Draco came back to his senses, he found that he had been taken upstairs to the study by his father. Before Draco could ask, the old horse, who was ready on the sofa, said to him, "Here, my name is Max Steele. I used to be a captain of the U.S. Navy. I bought it in Northern Ireland after retiring in 1994. This cattle ranch, but usually in business activities on both sides of the United States and the United Kingdom. Spike and his son Tychley are the Muggles I have hired to run the cattle ranch." Finally, the old horse asked Draco seriously, "Do you know what this means?" Draco lowered his head and pondered for a while, then raised his head and said with a distorted expression, "Did you raise other women here?" At that moment just now, Lao Ma had the idea of strangling this guy to death and forgetting about it. "Isn't it?" Draco rubbed his face and asked, "The people living here are all Muggles. No one would expect wizards to come to such a smelly place, which just ensures that Mother will not find out here." Lao Ma suddenly realized that what his son said made sense, and maybe he could try it when he had the opportunity. "There is nothing to do at home and read some messy books," the old horse said angrily. "If that's what you think, then why should I bring you here?" Draco sat up and fell silent. "This is the place where you, as a survivor of the Malfoy family, will live in seclusion in case something happens," the old horse said to Draco seriously. "Only you and I know this place, and your mother knows that I prepared it for you. She found such a place, but she thought it was in the Alps." Draco was taken aback by the sudden news, and he heard something bad from his father's words. Draco's face turned even paler at the thought that he might spend his whole life with cows for a little while. "The main reason for bringing you here today is not to tell you this," the old horse continued to say to Draco. "Do you have any plans for your future?" Draco has been staying at home since he left Hogwarts and rarely went out. Many times he didn't know what he was going to do. Seeing his son shaking his head in confusion, Lao Ma sighed and said, "I plan to send you to the United States." Draco's eyes lit up when he heard his father's plan, and he asked, "Are you going to Ilvermorny?" The first thing Draco thought of was the Ilvermorny girl named Lucy he met in the summer. Although he wrote several letters in the past few months, there was no reply, which made him very sad. He thought that Lucy's grandfather and Dumbledore were good friends, and he played an important role in Dumbledore's death, so it was normal for Lucy's grandfather to refuse Lucy's association with him. However, if I can appear in Ilvermorny and beside Lucy, maybe things will change. Thinking of this, Draco's breathing became heavier. At this moment, the old horse's words kicked Draco into the abyss. "You went to America not to Ilvermorny, but to Muggle University. I have entrusted the Cacker family to donate a large sum of money to Yale University, which bought your admission to Yale University. Notice. You will go to the United States next August, where you will study economics and law. By the way, Scamander has no granddaughter, and there is no girl named Lucy in the Scamander family. When Reverend Scamander came to England in the summer, he came to attend the Wheeleyes wedding. Also, don't you feel that there seems to be something missing in the report that day?" Seeing his son's gradually pale face, Lao Ma felt relieved. Chapter 550 The Old Horse in number 039, S Ambition, Part, comma. Many people always think that their parents don't understand themselves when they are adolescents, and that their parents' thinking can't keep up with the times represented by themselves. In fact, most parents are like mirrors in their hearts. They are also people from that age. They know what their children think, but their coping methods are different. Since summer, Lao Ma has noticed the changes in his son. Even knowing how many letters he sent to the United States, it's just that after his preliminary investigation, he found that this matter was not as simple as his son imagined. After he made further investigations and combined the intelligence from the British side for analysis, the final conclusion made his head ache. He originally planned to choose a way to tell his son about this matter in a way that would hurt his son less, but Xiao Ma's brain was a little too big today, so Lao Ma used this matter to vent his anger. Seeing his son's complexion constantly changing between pale and red, Lao Ma took out a wooden box from the desk drawer, took out a cigar from the box, cut off the head and lit it with a match. When the old horse's cigar was about to run out, Draco digested the news and recovered from the shock. "When did you know about this?" Draco asked with a bitter face. "When you wrote to Alvermorny for the third time," the old horse replied, and then he put out the cigar in his hand in the ashtray, and then said, "This matter will end here, and later how to deal with it is up to you." Followed the old horse and asked, "What do you think of the current situation?" "I don't understand." Draco shook his head and said, "On the surface, this is a struggle between the Dark Lord and those who oppose him, but I always feel that there is something deeper in it. Tell me what you think." After the old horse finished speaking, he got up and took out a bottle of elderflower soda from the small refrigerator in the study beside him, opened it and poured a glass for Draco and himself. "Since the British government started to intervene, I feel that the international law of secrecy is gradually losing its effect," Draco said. "That's right. The International Federation of Wizards once sent people to find me and Scrimgeour separately. They had no intention of intervening in our disputes, but only hoped that we would continue to implement the international law of secrecy." Lao Ma nodded and said, "In the past 2 days, Death Eaters and Muggle police have exchanged fire. The bullets used by the Muggle police are interesting, and they are probably made for wizards. And the Muggle parents of Hogwarts students have recently started to link up and make their voices heard, which means that more and more Muggles are beginning to know about the existence of wizards. It seems that the days of the International Statute of Secrecy are numbered. As long as it opens a mouth, it will collapse in an instant." Draco said, "Maybe the first place to open the mouth is not the United Kingdom, but the International Federation of Wizards in the East. Out of reach." This spring, when the International Federation of Wizards planned to establish a snowman reserve in the Himalayas, a team of wizards they sent got lost in the snow and entered the country illegally. Later, they clashed with the border guards and were eventually arrested. Arrested? The old horse said after taking a sip of soda. At that time, the International Federation of Wizards commissioned the French Ministry of Magic to going to negotiate with them. It turned out that the French side was caught in the middle and it was very embarrassing. Then the two countries simply joined hands to fool the International Federation of Wizards, while pretending to sentence illegal entry wizards to life imprisonment, while pretending to argue with the other party. In the end, all those wizards were sentenced to 3 years of labor reform for illegal entry and obstructing official duties. Now they are all planting trees in a desert called Mus. During this negotiation, the representatives of the French Ministry of Magic vaguely sensed that the wizards over there will make a big move next year in their daily chats. This big move will make the wizards over there officially collectively appear in the eyes of Muggles among. That's why, in order to prepare for the new era, I plan to send you to the United States. You have to see more aspects of this world and prepare for the future of the Malfoy family." After his father finished speaking, Draco picked up the soda in front of him, drinking while digesting what his father said. "Father, do you have any plans for the future?" Draco asked after putting down his cup. "Why should I study Muggle law and economics?" At this time, the old horse straightened his back, leaned forward, and pressed his hands on the table. He said to his son seriously, "If the International Statute of Secrecy becomes invalid, I intend to establish a political party representing the interests of wizards." What political parties do in the Muggle world, Draco had learned in Muggle studies, so he was taken aback by his father's intentions. Draco can assure you that among the wizards in Europe, there are definitely very few people who have his father's ideas. Is this possible? Draco asked uncertainly. He thought his father's plan was too crazy. Will Muggles accept the rule of wizards? So you have to go to the world of Muggles, let go of the excess pride of pure-blood wizards, read more, learn more, and think more, and see what Muggles want, and wizards can give them. Old Ma said as long as we can give them enough benefits, they will support us, said the son. More than 900 years ago, after William I was crowned King of England, he gave our ancestor Armand Malfoy the land in Wiltshire to thank Armand for handling grey matters for himself. As long as Muggles found out wizards are useful to them, They will not be stingy with their votes. In the Muggle world, economic development always comes first, and they have a well-functioning legal system, but both of these are unknown to us wizards. With these two aspects of knowledge, we can know how to fill up the money bags of Muggles and fill up the coffers of those capitalists. We can grasp the rules of the Muggle world and know how to act according to their rules game, and find exploits that work for us. Seeing his father getting excited, Draco knew that he would not be able to escape his trip to America next year. Moreover, he also discovered that the basis of his father's plan was that the Dark Lord was completely finished. Otherwise, as long as the Dark Lord was still there would be no conditions for carrying out his plan. Thinking of this, Draco broke into a cold sweat. If his father's idea was discovered by the Dark Lord, the only thing waiting for the Malfoy family would be Nagini's breakfast, lunch and dinner. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.